Calling the meeting to order at 7:15. Let's review the agenda. I have one item to add from an email that we just got today from Marion Neutra at the Select Board requesting, bringing up the issue that the 40B on Lake Street, I'm going to put that on the agenda so we could talk about when we have to reply to mass housing.
I'd like to add something also.
What else do you have? What do you
So
have?
Courtney attended executive session tonight with the select board, during which point they were talking about Silverwood, and some of it or much of it pertains to conservation. And I'd like Courtney to fill us in the most prudent, safest way possible.
We'll put that on the site so we could figure out what can be said in and or out of executive session, but okay.
And one more.
What else have you got there, Anna?
We need to talk very briefly, I hope, about the status of the Beaver Dam on Ghouling Street. It sounds like DPW wants to go in there and do more that has not been authorized yet by, under the Wetlands Protection Act, and they gave us information. And I see that it looks like Sean is here, so I would love to do that at some point while Sean is around, so he can help describe what needs to be done.
Okay, so that's a side issue. So we have two things on the side issues, basically.
Yes, and we have Steph Harrison doing minutes. Thank you very much, Steph.
Oh God, thank you so much, Steph.
And Christina Colleen is actually Sean Colleen. He's the director of DPW.
Okay, I move that we amend the agenda to include the Mass Housing Partnership letter of review of the 40B on Lake Street. I guess it's under side issues. We put that. We put the Beavers on Ghouling Street and the Silverwood Farm.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Okay, agenda has been amended. We have 2 minutes. Do we have a reading or something or citing that anybody wants to make before we start our hearing?
I
Carol, do you have a poem?
I do have a reading. It's not a poem. It's from Henry David Thoreau. This is from Walden. Okay, by Henry David Thoreau. Regularly at 7:30 in one part of the summer, after the evening train had gone by, the whippoorwills chanted their vespers for half an hour, sitting on a stump by my door or upon the ridgepole of the house. They would begin to sing almost with as much precision as a clock, within 5 minutes of the setting of the sun every evening. I had a rare opportunity to become acquainted with their habits. Sometimes I heard 4 or 5 at once in different parts of the wood, by accident, one a bar behind another, and so near me that I distinguished not only the cluck after each note, but often that singular buzzing sound like a fly in a spider's web, only louder. Sometimes one would circle round and round me in the woods, a few feet distant, as if tethered by a string, when probably I was near its eggs. They sang at intervals throughout the night and were again as musical as ever, just before and about dawn. And he goes on to describe hearing the screech owls and the sound of their, kind of scary sound at night. And then there's another paragraph that I think is a good way to end this. I rejoice that there are owls. Let them do the idiotic and maniacal hooting for men. It is a sound admirably suited to swamps and twilight woods, which no day illustrates, suggesting a vast and undeveloped nature which men have not recognized. They represent the stark twilight and unsatisfied thoughts which all have. All day the sun has shone on the surface of some savage swamp where the single spruce stands hung with lichens and small hawks circulate above, and the chickadee lisps amid the evergreens, and the partridge and rabbit skulk beneath. but now a more dismal and fitting day dawns, and a different race of creatures awakes to express the meaning of nature there. So I just thought that was such a lovely description of nature at a time, I think, when there really were a lot more birds and animals around you, if you happen to live out at Walden Pond.
Thank you. Okay. Now we move to more less ethereal issues of, I will now have a notice of the public hearing. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing at, well, I guess virtual meeting at Sherborn at 7:20 on the 19th of May. The hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw, Chapter 17, to consider a proposal by the Sherborn Town Forest Committee for a parking lot on North Main Street, map 10, lot 103. Work will be performed within the riverfront area, and this application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Office. All persons desiring to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, the hearing's now opened. Do we, who wants to present?
Could I share my screen? This is
Sure.
Joyce Hastings from GLN.
Proceed.
Well, I have the same problem with this meeting as I did.
Yeah. let me
I'm
know
not
if
able,
you
I'm
want
not
help.
able,
Did you update your Zoom?
Do you?
I can pull it up in a second, but why don't you get started?
You can have a competition to see who gets to pull it up first.
I just got booted out, so I'm not able to share.
I can share if you just want the plan.
Yep, that's it. So, good evening. On behalf of the Forest Committee, I have filed a notice of intent to address the concerns that we raised, that were raised in a request for determination of applicability last fall. Last fall, they had filed that request for determination of applicability, and it was determined that the stream adjacent to the proposed work is, and therefore the project would require notice of intent. And this is that notice of intent, along with a better sketch. So working with Karen Skinner-Catroni and Glossa Engineering, the Forest Committee had prepared this sketch. I've added some things to it with the permission of Glossa Engineering, which included the buffer zones and all. So first, the perennial stream runs along a stone-lined channel along one side of the property, and there is an existing first road that goes up through the middle of the frontage. And this proposal is to construct a 20 by 60 parking area. When we all met for the site walk, we could see that we parked in the area where this will be. And you can see that it fits between, depending on the vehicles, between 4 and 5 vehicles would be able to fit in this space. We had 4 vehicles in this parking area. This area is existing gravel. It's right about where your pointer is, your arrow is the doorstep to the old house. A little bit further up page, yeah, somewhere, but just above the gravel parking area. As you walk through this area, you can see that's existing gravel, and as such, we're calling this redevelopment under the Rivers Protection Act. So the proposed project would basically find the parking area to take out some of the basically lower the grade a little bit in this area and then just provide some gravel within that defined area. And then grade the existing forest road so that it's safe for people to park to access the remainder of the property. In addition to that, they are proposing to mow between the access road and the edge of the woods over by the perennial stream to control the invasive materials. That whole field there it's very clearly full of bittersweet, and the idea would be to continue mowing it as they have for many, many years. The area above the upgradient of the road where the old house and the old well is underneath the trees on the opposite side of the road would also be proposed to be mowed over where the gravel parking area is, that area through there. There are also 2 dead trees that are quite tall that they would like to cut. They would leave a standing stem for each of them, but they are extremely large, and should they, branches start breaking off, they could fall towards either the road or the gravel parking area. And there is one one maple that's leaning over the street that they either like to remove or limb because it's leaning over the street towards the wires. There's also, they're proposing to put a gate at the backside of the trail over near the old barn foundation. Not the trail, but the roadway, so that it limits access to vehicles going further into the forest. One of the things that we talked about, that I talked about in the narrative, was that they would like consider using an herbicide to treat the bittersweet, but I think after we had a discussion amongst the the forest committee, that they would probably just use mechanical means, just the mowing and the around existing trees to get all of this bittersweet under control. To continue mowing, clipping of the ones that are climbing the trees, and see if they can't continue to or start to get it under control. And if that becomes a problem, then they come back in the future with another plan. And I think that's everything that they were talking about. It's not, the plan really hasn't changed what their original proposal was. This is just more, well, it's a notice of intent instead. And I think that's it.
Okay. I'll ask one quick question before I just ask the other members. The mowing would be up to this existing stone wall. What's the bound on the mowing that you're thinking of doing? Going in the,
Well, they weren't proposing to cut down any shrubs. It was more just mowing what was field, taking down. And I think most of what you're pointing to, no, we're not cutting any more trees other than the 3 we asked for. It's just that those areas what we're talking about wouldn't go any further back than the existing stone wall.
okay, I just wanted to have a bound on that. Actually, I'll just open it up. I have some other issues, but why don't I just do other people have questions on the commission? Carol?
I was unfortunately unable to go on the site walk, so I was wondering if anything further was discussed at the site walk that was not part of your presentation just now.
No. Man, what do you mean by that?
Well, questions that the commission asked and answers from you.
Oh, no. I just basically show everybody aware of what the issues that we were outlined in the order, just to show, so they can see what we're talking about.
I have a couple of questions beyond that. This is a comment. I wish that this plan showed topo lines because I'd like to understand how the grade is going to change. And why I'm interested in that is because I want to know after the parking lot's finished, in which direction will it be sloping? And then beyond that, I'd like to talk about why I don't feel like cutting the grass all the way to the edge of the stream is the best idea. There's no vegetative buffer being provided.
Okay, Carol?
Yeah, I kind of have similar questions, Joyce. I think one question I had, my husband and I have gone over there and parked in approximately that area, and we've walked that trail so quite recently, so we're familiar with it. And my impression definitely is that when we parked, and there's really not, I guess there's gravel there somewhere. It's kind of hard to see, but you're kind of like, you're on a little bit of an uphill. So when you said it'll be kind of leveled and graded, I wonder how you're going to protect the roots of the larger trees there, just because when I've parked, it feels like I'm pretty close to those trees, and they're big mature trees.
So it won't really be, when I say it won't be leveled and graded, everything is still going to slope the way it slopes now. The forest road, the road that goes in right now, the access road, it kind of slopes back towards North Main Street, but the whole slope is very gently heading down gradient towards the stream. But it goes through that open field before it goes anywhere. And there's nothing moving from the roadway now. They've got a row of logs right here that are butted end to end all along that side. But when I talk about grading it, there's I don't know, there's like a piece of rock exposed up where the G is in parking. Things like just making it low and letting those small cars park. Myself and I parked up near I have two of our trucks parked right here where the P and the G are in that gravel parking area. And there's like a little bit of a rocky area right there. And that's kind of where it would be, we wouldn't level, it would just be graded slightly to bring it safer for normal cars to park there.
Like Michael's car.
Right. Right. But again, we're all four of us parked right where we're going to park. It's really more to define the parking area. So people aren't parking all over, the field or blocking the road or have someplace to find to go.
Yep. And then I guess the other thing I would say is I would echo what Jean said. I feel the whole area is within the 200 of the riverfront. I did go and look at the riverfront regulation 310 Mass Reg 10.58, and in the preamble, it talks about how the presence of natural vegetation within river-to-run areas is critical to sustaining rivers as ecosystems. Goes on to say riverfront areas are important wildlife habitat, providing food, shelter, breeding, migratory, and overwintering areas. Even some predominantly upland species use and may be seasonally dependent on riverfront areas. It talks about even that large dead trees provide nesting sites for bird species. They're corridors for the migration of wildlife, for feeding and breeding. Loss of this connective function from activities that create barriers to wildlife movement within riverfront areas results in habitat fragmentation and causes declines in wildlife populations. I mean, I would argue that as much as possible, this area within the 200 be left to return to meadow. It is meadow now from most of it. Certainly between, can I finish?
Oh, sorry.
Certainly between the trail and the riverfront, a lot of that is meadow now. And I think we have to be really careful about the idea that, if there's bittersweet, then we need to aggressively mow. I can see maybe mowing once a year to suppress the bittersweet, but having that vegetation be able to be high enough that wildlife can get through and feel protected, little, voles and everything else, or whatever the critters are, and that it functions as habitat, I think is really important. I think we should think the same way about even what is being referred to as the lawn. I didn't get a chance to go out there again with the site visit, but if that is essentially functioning as meadow, that also, provides wildlife habitat. So I just want to, since we have an opportunity here to really think it through and to, make sure this is good riverfront, I think we should do that. That's it.
Okay. Well, we will come back and discuss. That seems to be one of the major issues there. Courtney?
Sorry, I'm like trying to lower my hand and unmute at the same time. Stop, James. At least, from the site visit, and I wasn't under the impression that this was going to be a lawn. Right now it's like a giant shrub of bittersweet. And I think, it sounds like the plan would be to mow to knock back the bittersweet. And certainly, like, maybe I'm just trying to think of what we learned from the barber in terms of, like, do we need to mow more frequently at first to not knock things back? And then, then it would be mow once a year. Because, there's some native stuff buried underneath, but it's so choked out. It's so bad in that area.
Wonder too, if even the selective use of herbicides, I know
That has been pulled back. Just that was part of the discussion at the site. They've pulled back the request to use any herbicide. Even though it's what's in the proposal that we have, that they've withdrawn that part of it. Cindy, did you have any comments before I try to see if we could resolve a few issues?
Thanks, Michael. No, I don't have any issues that have not already been raised. So I'll just keep it short.
Okay. I'll come back to what might be the easiest one. What we're calling grading, as I see it here, is more what we're talking about, if I understand it better, is whether we're just trying to do some leveling of just the gravel parking lot. Is that the one area where you just want to do a little leveling to deal with cars there? Is that? It's more of a.
That is correct.
And whether you're adding, I don't remember it being that uneven. Even my low car didn't have any real problems there.
But you did actually comment on it, Michael.
I commented, but it turned out that it wasn't an issue.
Yeah.
I was a little nervous, but that's because there was so much grass there. I couldn't tell whether it was even or uneven. It was more the uncertainty.
I don't think it's going to need much there.
Right. I guess that's what I'm thinking, is that whether you need to bring in much material or we just need to just keep the grass, just scrape it level. I mean, are you planning on bringing in much material versus just doing some leveling?
No, I think it's more leveling, scraping, leveling.
Okay.
I've parked there with my Honda Accord and it was okay.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's what I'm
in
trying to
the
think of, how condition it, whether we're just conditioning it that essentially we're allowing some leveling, that there's no material being brought in, as opposed to leveling or you think you need to bring in some.
Well, they might bring in some gravel, because when you drive down the road, the parking area was actually more level than the road itself. So maybe just there's some ruts as you drive in that I'm not talking a lot of material. It's really just, as you pointed out, it's just taking out the ruts and leveling it. It's not creating a gravel base. It's just creating a defined area and taking out the rut.
So when all of that is done, are you saying, Joyce, that the existing slope, if you want to call it slope, is gentle and goes down gradient towards the stream, and it's going to remain going down gradient towards the stream?
Correct.
So my concern is now it's going to be a parking lot. It's going to be compacted. I'm concerned about pollutants from the cars eventually making their way we're close to the stream. So I will say again, I'm in favor of some sort of vegetated buffer that would be mowed only once a year.
That's the, right.
So,
I think
if
we, let's come to the mowing issue, or what we're talking about, because, right, I have the same
Right.
concern. Oh,
So
yeah.
we talked about mowing, and as we talked about, this was in fact one of the things we talked on site, and it's not, they're not looking to mow a week or even monthly. It was first, like, knock everything down, and maybe twice a year. It's not, they don't have a mower on site, and it's not really that easy, to get someone out there to mow it. So the idea would to, knock it down spring, summer, and then again in the fall, spring/summer, some between summer and the end of the growing season in the spring, and then again in the fall. But, work to get things, it's gonna take a little bit of work to mow through it the first time.
So I think we're not too far apart, if I hear it correctly, that we're talking about
Yeah, we're not.
at most, whether we're talking about just at most two mows a year. And whether for the commission that having a spring mow and something late in the season is that there'd be two mows a year, and whether we want to condition it, and whether for the applicant, whether you feel comfortable with that sort of two mow a year regime, then and see how it evolves, and see whether the meadow comes back well and beats back the bittersweet sufficiently so that you have more of a meadow feel that I think.
See
we want.
Stephen's hand.
I don't see a hand.
Yeah, Mike,
Sure.
may I?
Yes. Oh, by all means. Sorry.
Yeah, no.
Are we using your hand physically, or we're using the emoticon?
Oh, I was physically waving.
Oh, yeah, that's why. Okay, I've been watching for the other thing because of the shared screen.
My
Okay.
mistake. My mistake. A couple of issues. I heard the term lawn, and I do want to emphasize we do not want a lawn here because the lawn requires a lot of mowing. However, if you think of your property at the Leland Mill Pond, you do have much closer to a lawn which runs down to the bank of the Mill Pond and very close to the stream which forms over the dam. That's not our intent in any way. We do not want to be restricted to a number of one or two mowings. The reason we asked for as needed was if we find that we need to mow this 3 times a year, I don't want to have to come back and amend it NOI. And Lord knows we've spent a lot of time trying to get to this point. So I really don't want to have to go through a long ordeal to do this. Our intention is not to have a lawn. We want to mow. We do want to mow to the edge of the stream because that's where a lot of the invasives started and moved all the way to that beech tree. And that entire area, if you look at all of the ash and maple and beech, they all have invasive vines that came very close to killing them. And probably a third of the trees in there were killed by invasive vines. This is something we're trying to take care of. Normally our practice is to just cut down dead trees, but if there are trees that are going to fall on cars or out into the road, those are the trees that we're hoping to be able to take down. But that's not an issue either. So, but we would like to, it's an existing parking area. People pull in and park. We would like to define an area for them to park so they're not parking randomly anywhere in the area. And if we define a parking area, hopefully it will limit the number of cars to some extent. And that's one of the things we're hoping for.
That's the question. So let's come back to figuring out whether we're going to specify. I think the question is how we condition it. We just have to get down to the wording that we put in an order of conditions on this, and whether the idea of whether it's an as needed thing versus the fact that we've often met where we're trying to, this is given that this is a resource area, just so for others to understand that this first hunt, that the riverfront is actually considered a resource area. We're not just talking about buffer zone. So that's more of a concern for us. And I think in general, we're happy to see, I think get the consensus that we all want to have a nice meadow there that's mowed ideally at some point, only maybe once or twice a year to maintain its meadow-like features, I think is something that we could come to terms with. I'm just trying to think of what we're in the meanwhile, whether for the first year or something, whether you need more than 3 mows, or whether because we try to, or whether we might have as needed in the first year. I'm trying to find a compromise that we could all live with, of some wording in the first year or so that there's some limited mowing as needed, whether we limit the number to 3 or 4. And then after the first few years, we generally, when we have meadows that come back, we generally have a regime of no more than once or twice a year for that. And so that's where I'm trying to get to, and whether we can see our way through to a conditioning that might have some more mowings for a year or 2. And then after that, where it's conditioned to maybe once or twice a year. So we can get it. And the other parameter out before I recognize Carol and then Jean, and that there's always going to be the issue of manually cutting some of the bittersweet on the trees. That'll be needs to be taken care of. Let's see, what do you guys have that's just practical, Carol and Jean?
I mean, I can go. A couple things is that I definitely think that if the bittersweet is strangling the trees, you pretty much have to go and manually cut those, because just mowing up to the edge will get the smaller ones coming up out of the ground, but they're not gonna. At least that was our experience at the barber. People had to go out there with their pruners and just repeatedly cut them. The other thing I would suggest is maybe, I think this would require, though, that we would have to change the regimen over the next couple of years, that you could imagine doing, mowings very early, like now, that would, with the intent of carbon starving the bittersweet, then let the meadow grow up all summer, and then mow again in the fall. And we might get some advice on that, but my concern is that if we just kind of periodically mow now and then summer and so forth, we also are going to suppress the natives at the same time. But Jean, I don't know if you were thinking along the same lines, or if that's what you were as well.
Let's figure out how much mowing we allow in the first year or so, and then a change in regime. Let's just.
I guess I'm just saying. I guess I would like to have it prescribed in such a way that we aren't just saying, oh yeah, go ahead and mow as often as you think is fine, but that we actually discuss a regimen that we think will work, that minimizes, destruction of the meadow plants. And that's why I'm suggesting maybe, mowing now to try to carbon starve, because everything has come out right now. So getting everything down right now, you might deplete the vines to some extent, but I'm interested in whether other people have some expertise on that.
That fits with what Steve said. Okay, Jean.
If your intent for the mowing is to suppress invasives, unfortunately, the native plants that we desire to keep, you have to choose. If suppressing the invasives is your primary goal, you want to hit them twice early, in late May and in late June, so that they, after that, will possibly stop attempting to flower and set seed. And then a third mowing can occur late in the summer. If we want to ask for mowing that's timed correctly, that would be my recommendation. And I just want to say one more time, or no, I haven't said this before. I'm still harping on the vegetative buffer idea eventually. And even if it contains invasives it still offers habitat value. It still prevents pollutants from making their way to the stream.
I would say that for that, right, whether the height of it, I think even with the mowings, which are going to be high, that I think some of that could be achieved. Do we want to have, are we down to trying to get to a practical thing? Oh, I'll let Cindy chime in here. I see your hand before.
Just
I
a
try.
very quick question. Do we know how high a mowing will be? Like 6 inches? A foot? Do we know how high a mowing? will be?
It's probably, it's a bush hog. It's not a lawnmower. It's probably 4 to 6 inches.
Okay. So do we try to find a compromise between what some flexibility that obviously the applicant would want more, and we're trying to protect this vegetated buffer there, whether we, and you could probably, that whether we start, it's not, I guess the amending an order of conditions gets a little harder these days now that we have, because I was about to say whether we start with the fact that there's a mowing, limit the mowing to 3 times in a season and properly timed. And how far we want to specify that in the order of conditions is a question. I'm just trying to get down to the actual wording so we can concoct something that we would all be, that might not be what everybody wants, but that might work, because we do have a trade-off between how much vegetation and whether there's some natives that don't do it versus the fact that there's a lot of invasives management. And I'd probably err on the side of invasives management for now. That would allow it to get closer to a meadow, and that some of the natural stuff native stuff might come back. So I'd be in favor of sort of maybe a 3 mow a season regime for a number of years. And I'd actually like to see whether, I don't know if I want to put as a condition that after 3 years, we actually look at the fact that whether the invasives are under control enough to have a little bit more of a vegetative buffer along the sort of 10 or 20 feet of the stream itself that might get cared for less, maybe only mowed once a season in the future, just to get a little heavier vegetation near the stream. But are we comfortable with the idea of, because some people want specificity, that we have a 3 mow limit for this invasives management approach with the goal of trying to achieve a meadow?
I thought that, oh, Cindy, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah, Cindy, you can want to try again?
Go ahead, Carol, go ahead.
I thought Jean's suggestion was a good one. I would say that we should try that for 2 seasons rather than 3, and then, have the conservation agent, come back to, basically build it into the order of conditions that they need to come back to the commission, because I feel like I agree with you, Michael, that the ultimate goal is to get it down to hopefully, 1 or 2 mowings, and we're starting out with 3. And so that's one thing. And I think also, hand pruning around the trees. I think one other thing is I feel that I don't see any reason that it shouldn't be extended up to the trail rather than the 20 or 30 feet or up to the road or whatever we want to call that driveway, because it just creates more robust buffer and it's still within the 200.
Yeah, but I still think a meadow is a little bit different than what might come. That's why I was sort of differentiating, but I'm not sure I want to go that far. Yeah, I guess I just want to figure out, right, I want to write an order that, given the difficulties of amending an order of conditions, I'd like to make sure we get it straight so that they have the flexibility and we still have what serve the wetland interests. I used to feel differently now. Courtney and then Cindy, and let's see if we can figure out what we got here since we're getting close.
So I know, like Jean mentioned about having, vegetated buffer, closer to the river or the stream, excuse me. I'm wondering, it's going to be interesting to see, after the 2 or 3 seasons, how are we doing with the bittersweet? I wonder if, at some point, maybe we could plant some things along the edge of the stream, just kind of protect it more. But it all depends on the invasives, obviously, and because there may not be any point in planting anything if the invasives are just coming back real strong. So
Or it
it's going to be
vegetates
interesting
nicely.
to see what progresses.
Yeah, it could vegetate nicely and
Right.
then we don't need. Cindy?
Sure. So I liked the 2-year rather than the 3-year for the 3 mows per year. And I also like the prescribed timing that Jean had. So I would want to put that in a condition. So late May, to time it late May, late June. And it was the other end of summer, or was the other October? Anyway, the third.
End of summer.
Okay, end of summer. And then just really, the 2 years rather than the 3. And then I like the idea that I forget who brought it up, but reevaluating it, that it would come back to the commission to be reevaluated to see where things stand and then go forward from there. Can we knock it down to 1 mow a year? Or, is it just so crazy with invasives that you need to continue with this or look at something else, maybe herbicides? I don't know. But I think reevaluating it after 2 years is prudent.
Okay. Right. The question is, can we write an order of, I see your hand, you'll have to wait. I guess I'd like to see, I think I want to first ask the applicant whether you're okay with, I guess it's not okay. Does it make sense to you if we give you the 3 mow a year regime that we'd like to see that sort of, we think works for natives and some other plant and wildlife habitat, that we would do the 3 mow regime? Can you meet that kind of specificity of timing? Is that going to be a problem to, it's plus or minus some weeks, but is that specificity of timing something that you can do for the mowing?
I
Steve,
think the 3 mows are very good.
and the
Hopefully,
timing issue you can meet?
yes.
Okay.
Like,
That gives it about a month or a month and a half in the middle of summer for some of those goldenrod and things like that to recover, which is.
Yeah, no, I think we have something here that might work
Yeah.
there. We do it for the 2 years. I'm just trying to figure out how we word a condition for going forward without having to go through an amending.
Is there a way to open end that a little bit if it doesn't?
Yeah,
If the
we could
3
think
doesn't
about,
work?
let Jean was going to go next and then Courtney, and then see what practicalities we got.
so on our own property at Hidden Meadow, we're undertaking, based on a recommendation made from the ecologists who've done the inventory at Hidden Meadow, we're undertaking timed mowing for 3 years. We would like to do it for 4, but we're not sure if we're going to have the resources for that. So we're going with 3, but I feel like 2 is probably not enough.
So you want more? Okay. Courtney?
I actually was gonna say something along the lines of what Dave said. So is there a way, I'm trying to think how we word this so that,
Yeah.
there's an assessment and that the 3 mowings may continue with the permission of the commission or the agent or something like that?
No, maybe we just write it that way. That we
Yeah,
do
'cause-
2 years of the 3 for sure, and then an assessment with the commission to
Right.
continue the 3-year regime for.
Because I don't want
another
to
year or
lock,
2.
yeah, I don't want to lock into something and it's still a hot mess.
So
And then we have
all
to
feel
do an
comfortable with
amendment.
that? So we're going to write a condition where it's 2 years, you could do the 3 mow on the regime, and then after 2 years, we do a reassessment, but that the order has the flexibility to continue to do it for a 3rd or 4th year. So it gives you the flexibility to do it longer. with the 3 mow regime, and then put it that the stated goal is to go down to a 1 or 2 mow regime going forward. And that's how we would almost word the conditioning. And we would assess the level of invasives along the way. Is that something we all can feel comfortable with as
Yes,
commissioners?
yes, but is that assessment point also when we decide whether or not there should, that a buffer should be allowed to generate?
Sure, we could put in that maybe, are we talking about talking about a more narrow area right along the stream?
Yeah,
Yeah, we could put that in there too, and we could see whether if there's not, and if there's not that much invasives, and that might even just an area where it's only mowed once a year to maintain that buffer. But that if it's still a reasonable quality. Okay, I think we have.
Michael,
Yeah,
it feels like I want to clarify whether it seems like we've been talking about the area between the road and the river. I'm just wondering if we feel like we've addressed the area to the north.
oh yeah, on the other side of the trail.
That's still within the 200 riverfront. And I'd be interested to hear from anybody who attended the site visit about what the conditions were like there.
Yeah, that was pretty scrappy. We didn't look too closely there. What were you thinking of just doing the same? There was less invasives there. Just do
Well,
the
there-
same
there-
mowing regime there on the other side?
Yeah, we're looking to do the same on the other side. The bittersweet is there. They have cut it out of the beech and, the ash and the maple just to try and preserve those trees, but yes, they'd like to do the same.
So
mowing
we're
on
gonna
that
write
side.
this. So we're gonna write this thing as the whole riverfront area, which is a resource area up to the stone wall. So we have this sort of central rectangle that we're having the same kind of mowing issues and regime that we're talking about now. Does that work for everybody here?
Yes.
Okay,
Can I ask something about that, though? I got the impression maybe from Courtney's comment that closer to the riverfront, it was a sea of bittersweet. Is that, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to go to the site visit, but is that also true? The part that's north of the trail? I was under the impression when I've walked there, but admittedly not right now, that there wasn't as much bittersweet there, and maybe it could just be mowed once a year.
I guess, do you guys, I don't know. We
There's
didn't
not
look
as
that
much-
closely.
There's not as much bittersweet on that side, and maybe, after they mow it once, go through this 2 years and just see what it looks like. I mean, their
Okay.
goal is constantly mow here.
I mean, that's where I'm wondering, Joyce, if, like, we're all agreeing that in the areas where it's really thick, we should try to knock it back, but if it can be controlled by mowing once a year, like now, try to carbon starve it and then just not mow, that would be great, because that obviously gives all the vegetation more opportunity to recover as meadow.
Yeah. Well, I think their goal probably wouldn't want to be excess mowing anyway. So that if Steve could avoid some time, or whoever's doing the mowing could do a little less work there, they'd be happy. But I guess that's your hand there, Steve. Yes, what are you going to say?
Well, I just want to say, I don't think the area to the north of the access road requires as much, but I would like to at least mow it twice. I think in the spring and then late fall would be helpful. The area, about half of that area north of the road, closer to Main Street, does still have a lot of bittersweet. And it does need to be, I think it should be mowed twice a year.
Well, do
Yeah,
we
I was
do
gonna
we want to
say.
limit it to twice a year there in the order versus just leave it as all one big area?
If you're gonna leave the whole thing to up to 3 times, that's fine, that's great.
I'd like to, since it's very clearly defined, and I'd like to have different regimens, because let's do what's appropriate to the
I
vegetation.
guess we could do, so if they feel comfortable, it'll be an interesting experiment. Do you feel
Yeah.
comfortable with the fact that we just do the 2 times north of the thing and the 3 times here for the first 2 years, and then we reevaluate?
Yeah,
So if we were evaluating it after 2 years, is it possible to just treat it all the same, just in case? Maybe you won't mow the 3 times, again, the goal is not.
I would agree with you. I know Carol feels otherwise. I would like to leave it so that they have the flexibility to make sure we could get back to bittersweet. So I would be okay with that personally. I don't know what, I guess we just got to go through the commission and get it there. Cindy's got her hand up, so I should let her talk, and we're gonna have to end this somewhat soon. We have a
Thank
little
you.
more
So
time.
I was not able to make the site walk yesterday, but I was out there today to look at the site in advance of tonight's meeting. And just a quick observation that I had, I saw a ton of milkweed plants to the north of that driveway. And I'm not sure if I saw a ton of milkweed plants coming up, and I'm not sure if it was hard for me to tell if that was the parking area at that point, or if that was to the northwest of the parking area, sort of by the old well.
Yeah, I don't, that working area, there really wasn't a lot of vegetation where the parking area is.
Yeah, there isn't.
So
This is
there must
very-
have been, all those milkweeds that I saw coming up must have been, by the old well more. So then that makes me wonder about mowing that as, I don't know.
You're gonna have that trade-off of, right.
I know, I
mean,
kind of come back to what Carol was saying, but I understand what you're saying too, Michael, but I kind of come back to, should we be, I don't know.
I mean, I'd
knocking
like to say to them that they can exercise some judgment to the extent that you don't see any invasives there, to try to not mow that if you do see that kind of stuff there, and just give that kind of guidance. But let Courtney and Anna go, and then we got to figure out whether we're ready to close the hearing.
Yes, that area on the stream side is a sea of bittersweet, but where we were talking about just behind the parking area, that is also a hot mess. And I mean, yes, there's less bittersweet up on the north part along the road, but it's not that much better. I mean,
I guess we got to figure out a little poll. Anna, go before I do a little poll to figure out how we refine this.
Just wanted to say that the just lost my train of thought. We do have a DPW number, and so we could potentially close the hearing. And there is also time later on the agenda if this needed to be pushed to later tonight to be continued, since we do have several people here for the next item.
Yeah,
on the
I know
agenda.
there is that, right. I'm hoping that we're gonna push this thing through now. That I guess the only thing I see outstanding is how much we literally condition this to 2 mows versus still permit 3 if needed. I'm leaning towards 3 if needed so that we could just get the stuff under control. Courtney seems to be that way. I'd like to think that if they don't need it, they won't do it. It's just extra work. And I'd like to get it done. I guess it comes back to, well, we have 5 of us here. We just got to figure out, Cindy, do we want to give them the flexibility to go up to 3 around this area here, and Jean and Carol? Since we have 2 people said that we give them the flexibility.
I have to defer to the others because I've looked at the south side of the cart path, or whatever you want to call it, but I'm not familiar with the north side.
So we're gonna have a tie here, because we got to just pick something. Whether I'd like to give them the flexibility and say to them, to the extent possible, don't mow as much if needed over here, especially if it's over there, but I'd give them the ability to do it. Carol, Cindy, how much do you want to, how do you feel about that, since it looks like we could have a 2-2 tie?
I guess I would go with what Steve Petty had said, which is that, that it isn't as heavily invaded. But I hear also, if it's really heavy under the maple trees, or right under the trees there, selectively whacking that back 3 times a year, I would support that. I know that it can be hard to feel like what's the right thing to do, but as much as possible, I would suggest that in the area there that is, that seems to have less bittersweet and has the milkweeds, that we try to hold that back to twice a year, because it's bound to be better
Well, we'll
habitat.
put it in there. We'll word it that we'll do 3 and say to the maximum extent possible to cut it back to avoid some of the native plantings.
Michael, I have one more quick question.
Yeah, better be quick.
Yes, Joyce said that the trees that are dead that they want to take down, that they would leave standing something. But what specifically do you mean, Joyce? Are you talking about 12-foot tall snags or what?
What would you like?
An issue came up of that if there's left the snags, they could fall down into the stream and cause some blockage. There was that's something that I recall from the meeting, or it was a desire to cut it down fairly close to the base because it's right next to the stream, and worried about branches falling into the stream that could block it and cause a maintenance issue. And to some extent, there's a lot of dead wood around in general that maybe it's near the road. So I'd like to think that's not but I don't know, bugs care and other things.
Did you say branches though, Michael? If they leave a snag, there's no branches on a snag.
No, when the snag fell was the issue.
Yeah, they're pretty tall, so it just, the ones that are right there, it's like, it shouldn't, whatever we have there, it shouldn't be tall enough to fall into the road or to block the access route.
Well, yeah.
If we left it up 3 feet,
What?
if we left it up 3 feet,
Did you
Sure.
say 3 feet?
Yes.
Oh, I was thinking more like 15. At first I was starting at 30 in my mind. And then I down to
Okay,
15.
okay, we have a problem now. Okay, this is, I don't know. I'm gonna play the hat of the fact that we got to figure out whether we're ready to close the hearing now, or we're gonna end up continuing this thing till later in the meeting because of all these little details. Because we're
Can we
already-
meet at 12?
yes,
Okay, I move that we, I think we've discussed all the conditions enough. I move that we close the hearing.
Second,
Any discussion?
I was just gonna
Yeah,
say that I think the taller snag is fine because those snags take a long
it's a-
time before they fall.
okay. We've already
And
got
then
the
it's only
compromise. We've already
back.
got the compromise. Michael, I, Carol,
I'm not sure what I'm voting on.
closing the hearing.
Okay, did we finish discussion of the snag?
Yes, 12-foot compromise.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yes,
Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
Jean.
aye.
Okay, so the
Did
hearing's
you
at
vote
least,
aye? Michael, did you vote?
yes, I voted first,
Right.
so I don't forget myself. So the hearing's at least closed, so we don't have to continue with the hearing at least. It's just procedurally, since we're slipping by 10 minutes, for the sake of Dave, Steve, and others there, we're going to bring this up again after we have a set of discussions. So it's probably going to be towards about an hour from now or less, where we actually go through and get the consensus, even though we voted, we have a motion to permit the project with the conditions that we've discussed, is what would be the next thing there, where we would just go over the fact of just the exact wordings that basically we've gone over all the conditions here that you've heard in terms of the mowings, the pattern, and which side, and the snag and the trees. So essentially, we're going to repeat everything we've just said, and just with a formal vote to permit the project to go ahead. And then we would then write the order of conditions. So unfortunately, if you want to wait around, you can be for that formal thing there, but in general, the conditions will be just what we've discussed and gotten some closure on here. But we have to move on.
Thank you
You
very
can
much.
read it. So sorry about that. Let's go on to,
Thank you.
yes.
you.
Conservation Works
Thank you.
Inventories. Sorry to be so abrupt on that. Okay, I think it was Kelly sorry about that delay, Kelly.
No problem.
Unshare.
Oh, yes, thank you. I'm happy not to look at people's faces so big anyway.
What does that mean?
It's like this barrage of faces.
It's
of
about
them.
me. It's about me. I'm looking rough today.
No, it's also because Courtney doesn't have her lovely being or plant or whatever.
I look better with my guy.
So
Okay.
who's leading
let's
this,
see.
Kelly, or do you want me
Kelly,
to pull it up?
I think Kelly, or between the two of you, figure it out.
Michael, request first, which is that if David and Steve, and I don't know if that's Laura or Sam or both of them, want to leave, they're here for the bridge, not for the inventories. And I would suggest we take the bridge first, so they are free.
Okay, fine.
What's your question?
He was just asking about, so that's on the agenda at 8:20, but everybody's basically here and agendas and discussions could be moved around.
Yeah, no,
It's
I'm asking,
8:16.
what is the question about the
Question was
bridge?
whether David and Steve and Sam and Laura, who are here for, and Rafe, who are here for the bridge, we should take that up first rather than the inventories.
So let's take it up. Let's start right now.
Just to clarify the context of this discussion, our plan had been to submit an RDA for this proposed new bridge over at Bailey. And Jean suggested that instead of coming in with the formal RDA, we have a preliminary discussion with the commission and see, with no commitments, of course, because it's preliminary and informal, if an RDA is the proper approach to it. And of course, we hope you would say yes. In brief, you have seen the photographs that Cindy took of the area. In my wandering around town, I would say that 50 or 60 foot stretch of boggy peat is about the worst condition of any trail I know of in town. It's a good deal worse than the Perry Street crossing or the Course Brook issue. Every time a horse goes through, they're up to their hocks in mud. A little ways up the trail forks here, and going counterclockwise around Bailey, you turn right as soon as you get to the wet area, go uphill, upstream, long loop around, and then come back and meet up at the same place. A short ways upstream, the land is a little higher. The banks are much, much closer and firmer. And it's a great place for a crossing. And there are photos that Cindy took of the crossing spot.
And I can share those if people want to see them right now.
I just want to jump in and give credit where credit is due. I only narrated the photos, but Laura Van Boekum actually took the photos.
Okay.
Okay, credit well accepted there. Well, the question is, how much in terms of to be, I guess it's at this point, it's how much the photos are important before we can spend time looking at it.
I don't think.
Well, versus the permitting issue, versus we just have to resolve how we want to permit this. Because it looks like an attractive project that's going to clearly benefit the wetlands.
Okay, and the point is the bridge is not proposed to be where the wet area is. The bridge is proposed to be upstream, and I'm not exactly sure how far that is, maybe 50 yards. And because of the contours of the stream bed there, it is a good deal narrower than the Perry Street Bridge location. The bridge is identical in design of what you reviewed and approved 2 years ago, I guess, except in 3 respects. One respect is it would be narrower, the span is shorter. It would be about 12-foot span instead of a 16-foot span. Because the banks slope upwards very conveniently, the ramps at either end would be a lot shorter. And the final change is at Perry Street and Course Brook, there were cement blocks put down as buttresses. And Steve suggests that we use wooden, pressure-treated wooden buttresses to which the bridge itself could be fastened. There would be no contact with the stream at all at this point. It's not a constant flow at all. And because the drainage area is so small in that area, even when it's flowing and relatively wet, the flow is very, very little. It's not a big deal. And we hope it would be a pretty simple regulatory issue with minimum number of conditions. The construction would be directly, immediately next to the existing trail. There might be a matter of 4 feet, 5 feet from the existing trail to where the ramp would begin. So there's no new trail there. On the other side, it goes through a fairly open forest, and we wouldn't have to cut anything to reconnect to the existing trail. So
Okay. Right.
Can I take a
Yeah,
turn?
let's go. Cindy has her hand up first. So using that, let's talk about this regulatory permitting issue.
So thanks, Michael. So I think this is a great project. Like I think, you know, it helps to move it out of that really boggy, mucky area. So I really applaud that. And yeah, I think it's a great project. That said, as I was thinking about this project and then thinking about the other projects that we've, you know, permitted and how it was the same or different, it's kind of, you know, conceptually, it's in my mind, the two projects that came into my mind that I was comparing to were the Corsebrook project and the Perry Street, in that, you know, they were going through a really boggy, wet area and then were moved to a more favorable area. And in both of those cases, I believe they were NOIs, correct me if I'm wrong.
they were.
And so, you know, so I think I would like to stay consistent because it seems like, you know, that's what we've done previously. So from a permitting standpoint, I like to stay consistent. That's where I'm coming out on it.
Let's see whether, do you want to reply to that, Kelly, before
Just
Jean
really
goes?
quickly, we did those as NOIs because they were the first time the commission had considered that kind of thing. And if I remember the discussions correctly, it was, yes, we're going to do these with an NOI now, but that's not necessarily how we'll do them in the future. We just want to see how it goes.
Okay,
Can I make
Jean?
a comment, please?
Yeah, go.
I want to remind everybody that I don't know if it was last year or the year before. We had 2 discussions with SFTA about work that they would like to do. The first one is not relevant to this. It had to do with switching things around inside the general trail maintenance order conditions. The second discussion we had was about permitting, potentially permitting bridges with RDAs. And what was concluded was that we would probably accept an RDA for a new bridge if the new bridge was going to fit the footprint of an existing bridge and if it was going to take place on an existing trail. So here we don't have a bridge at all, and there is a proposal to relocate the trail. Those are the only 2 situations that, those were conditions that we said would give us, under which we would consider an RDA only and not an NOI. And the other thing I want to say is that this is riverfront area. So, I mean, that's another thing that we're sticking with is NOIs for work in riverfront area.
This is a perennial stream.
Yep.
Other commissioners want to weigh in on this regulatory approach conundrum?
I had a quick question. I'm not sure I know exactly where this is. Is this, there's a trail that kind of goes along the wetland part where you're kind of walking parallel to Washington Street and it's completely muddy and mucky now. Is that the trail we're talking about? I mean, you can barely see the trail anymore because it's so wet.
That's what we want to bypass. We want to get rid of.
Yeah, and we're sure there's a perennial, that's a perennial stream that's coming down through there because it seems like it dries up in the summer.
It hasn't.
It's
It-
mapped,
it-
it's mapped as perennial. That's what, that's what determines it.
Okay.
That the area where the trail goes through currently did not dry. I mean, obviously we had a really wet summer last summer. It was very wet all last summer. I feel like, I mean, I'm back there all the time, and it seems as though, I don't know whether it would be considered a swamp area but it seems like it's moving more into the trail.
Yeah.
Than it used to be, from what I can tell. The area where where it would dry out is, and again, where the trail originally was, it's now moved. People keep moving it based on, one time it was because of a fallen tree. And then also because now the wet as well, there's about 4 trails going through that section that's all wet, I mean, in my opinion, completely horrible to use conservationally and just environmentally not a good area. But I haven't seen it dry out in well over a year, probably.
Well,
Yeah, probably close to 2 years. I have not seen that area dry out.
Yeah, it's very spread
Okay.
out now. Yeah, I agree with that.
Coming back to it, Anna, were you going to comment on the perennial issue?
I haven't checked, but if Jean says that it's mapped as perennial, then
Well, the only
That's the
reason I
answer.
asked Jean is because, you know, there is a bigger perennial stream that kind of goes under Old Orchard, and then it goes into, I think it goes straight into the big wetlands there, into Dirty Meadow. So I wasn't sure whether you would confuse it with that, but there is this stream that comes downhill from the higher parts of the Bailey, which I think that's what you're talking about, is also a perennial stream, even though it kind of.
Okay. Courtney?
I see Jean's point, but I also, it's kind of, it's almost like not a new bridge because they're replacing something and moving it out of a wetlands area.
Is there, but there's no bridge there now.
No.
It's everybody's logs, everybody placing logs. and
Oh,
stuff.
the law. Okay.
You just jump from stone to stone. It is really a mess to try to get
I
through.
see. Yeah.
I mean, the trail has kind of disappeared for a good.
You have a regulatory problem here.
Yeah, we
Rafe,
do.
if you want to go, I mean, we all agree it's a great project. We just have to
Yeah.
figure out how we are appropriate in our regulatory obligations. But Rafe?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think it would be good to double check if the stream coming down the hill is persistent, because it does really dry up, and there's so much
but
wet
we have
around
to
there. You
go
want to make
by
sure you're
other
identifying
time.
the right one.
Yeah.
So it'd be good just to confirm that. The other thing, just in terms of the regulatory and what parameters were set, I mean, I think the idea of SFTA coming to the commission was that, you know, we wanted to streamline the process for maintenance, which has been great and I think working well. And that we also wanted to streamline the process for building bridges, because, and really not just places where we're replacing bridges, that wouldn't do much for us longer term. There's 10 or 15 areas around town where there are trails that are just wet all the time. And I think what they need, this is probably a little bit of the worst one. I don't know if it's the best one to start with for the process, because you know, we started with this one because it's the worst. But what we're hoping to do is set up a process down the road, you know, similar to probably what they've done in the trustees, where there's wet trails and there's been very simple, you know, kind of on the side of the trail boards put down, or perhaps something a little more evolved than that at trail systems, you know, all in the area where it's basically just, you know, 4 or 5 feet wide. It's just boards on top of boards, and it's laid down in a muddy area where, you know, bikes and walkers and probably even horses can get across, because it's not really spanning anything. It's just allowing you not to have to walk through the mud. It seems to be done very successfully in other areas. And that's, I think, the part that we'd like to be able to streamline. So that wouldn't fit those, it wouldn't fit the condition of there being an existing bridge. That seems to me
Yeah,
to
but
kind
in
of be
this
a
case,
one-off. where
those
you
are
have bridges.
existing
Yeah.
trails. This is creating a new trail. Part of the problem we're wrestling with. Those things are different because it's an existing trail. It's kind of like
Fair
trail.
enough.
maintenance.
So
And
we may
that's why
decide
we're
something
stuck
for
with a
here.
little bit
Yeah.
of a problem here.
Yeah, understood. But hopefully that won't set a precedent where whatever we decide on this one means that's the way, we're
No,
going to do it
no,
going
I
forward
think for
every
that
time.
kind of stuff, that's much more straightforward, that kind of thing.
Perfect.
We would have problems
That
with that
decision
kind of
was
thing.
made. It was made and voted on. What conditions would have to be met in order for us to allow a bridge with an RDA?
Yeah.
You want to reverse the vote? Go right ahead and
Well,
try.
Yeah, I think at some point we should probably address that, because I think we ended up kind of at a stalemate where it was like, yeah, we understand what you're trying to do, which again is to promote the use of the trails and have people not walk around the trails and make them worse. I think it's for the good of everything. We're trying to volunteer our time and have the trails be more used and more useful and healthier for the environment.
That's
And that
appreciated.
process,
Well,
yeah, so we wanted to
you don't
streamline
want to
that
make it
process.
a
And I
trade-off.
understand at the time, we kind of said, well, we're not sure. So let's set some preliminary conditions, see how it goes, and then we'll come back and address the broader one. So yes, I
Right.
think in the future, we'd want to put forth something that is simplified versus what was decided last time. But I recognize that this case is different.
Yeah, this is different, and I think the question is more a matter of, even if we require an NOI, the whole issue of whether we waive some of the specifics that have to go into it, so that we still have an NOI that's less burdensome to be done in terms of whether a lot of all the mappings and the topos and whatever. I mean, I guess I'd like to put forth the idea of that, given that it's probably riverfront, which is a resource area, and it's a new trail, and that to be regulatorily consistent, that it might be an NOI. The question is whether these kind of things, whether we use the flexibility of what we require in the NOI so that it is a simpler process in terms of what more information do we need to do that, because it's a good constructive thing. If the fees issue can be waived.
They always are.
And right, that issue's there. The question is whether all of the work that has to go into mapping it or drawing it, or whether we could accept how much we need a whole engineer drawing, is like, that's the major cost. And to do whether something like that, we can find a way to modify our NOI requirements for a project of this kind of type and interest.
I don't know why it's considered to be so dramatically more of a chore, because first of all, you've got templates from the other bridges that Marion put together in terms of the narratives. You can just use.
I'm talking about the mapping. Oh, I'm talking about the plan.
Okay, yeah,
mapping.
but
That's
I'm talking actually to SFTA. I don't see it as being dramatically different from, you still have to have a posted hearing, so what's the big deal?
No, I'm talking about, yeah, but you're going, I think that's less of a big deal than the issue of what paperwork do they have to
What
provide.
documentation? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
okay.
the question that I'm getting at. I think the other stuff, that if it takes an extra hearing, a formal hearing, we have to have an RDA one anyway. So we have an NOI hearing. It's more a matter of what documentation they have to present and what we would accept for a project like this. That I think is going to be the crux of getting something resolved. And we actually we're going to have to continue this in a minute, because we have a topic. I don't know if I see Artemis here. I want to stick to our agenda. We might have to pick this
Do you
up.
see Laura Van Blarkamp's hand?
Yes, I see some hands, but I'm dealing with the fact that it's 8:34, and at 8:35 we have a topic that we might have to take up. It's not a long one, but we have to. Not even sure what we have. That we might have to come back to this discussion if people would hang around to just deal with another issue. But
Michael, I don't see Artemis on here yet, just FYI.
Yeah. But I'm coming down to the practicality of whether that, I think, given the resource area and everything else, that, and the consensus that we in the votes in the past, that it would be an NOI. The question is whether we can make some adjustments to the documentation that's required to accompany the NOI. given what we,
Michael, if it's going to be an NOI anyway,
mm,
you don't need votes to waive some conditions, I don't believe. So let us just take up the terms of the NOI when we get around to it. It won't be for some weeks. I wondered if I could have just 2 minutes to deal with the inventory question before you move on to Artemis.
okay, fine.
Michael, Carol's hand is up.
Yeah, I know. I was about to recognize her, and I know Laura wanted to say something too, but I guess I get the consensus. I'm gonna still, unless you're gonna add something more to the issue of, I think we're all leaning to the fact that due to the regulatory issues and where it's gonna be and the votes we've taken and the precedents in the past, that for now, this would be an NOI.
Yeah, I mean,
Is anybody feeling differently than that? That's to just sort of get to the point here.
that's what I was going to suggest, is that I think it seems like we may all be in agreement to, we
I mean,
decide.
I struggle with the amount of work, but I think we can find ways to maybe make it a more, and we have to look into this abbreviated NOI issue. Something that I started to do, that we have to find ways to see if we can operationalize that. But I think to the people, the applicants, that given the regulatory setup, it's hard to, and the riverfront issues and whatever, even though we'll check it, that I think an NOI is going to be the route. So Kelly, if, and the rest of you, whether we can talk at a different point about what would be going to the NOI, that we could work it out, and then we can move on to your topic, Kelly, if we leave it at that.
Can I just make one of the comments I was going to say is that I know that it may feel a little bit burdensome to the Sherborn Forest and Trail to have to do it, but you can see even from our discussion that in the absence of, a map or something that shows exactly where things are, you have to be super familiar with it on the land, and so that's where they're going through that process with the NOI and putting together a map and everything is really helpful for the decisions of the commission. I just wanted to share that.
Although I'll say what level of mapping is needed, but go on, Laura.
Don't site walks happen anyways? I mean, I guess I'm not as familiar with the whole process and the difference between the two, but don't site walks happen anyways? Isn't that?
Not for RDAs.
Okay, you don't go out and walk the area? No? Okay.
We do. We walk the area for both of them, and even an RDA would require some sort of sketch of something.
You go on site visits for RDAs? Interesting.
We have done, yes, we've done that. We don't formally always have it, but people do go look,
Right.
depending on what it is. But RDAs generally don't have work in a resource area, for example. So that's why it's simpler. I guess I just want to check. Is somebody here for the Artemis Chakowski? Is he here yet? Anybody there for that? I see Thomas came in. Okay.
Give me 30 seconds.
Go.
Okay, the reality is everybody saw my memo, my short email. The June presentations will not happen. Jean is going away. I'm not going to touch it. And unless somebody else wants to take up with the inventory writers who have shown themselves extraordinarily unpunctual, the only question is whether we pay them or not. And this is not to stiff them, because I very much want to have something larger and better later in the year. It's just simply whether we pay them now or withhold the money.
I would go with your judgment that you put in the emails, just to hold off for now, and we'll find ways to deal with the funding given other sources. So I would go with your recommendation not to pay. And still, since we have other ways of making sure we get a good presentation later, if we can line them up.
Kelly, to the point that you made in the email about turning back the money, I would not jump to agree to do that, because we have a few weeks left, and I know there are special project aspects that we may choose, relevant to the inventories, that we may choose to spend that money on. So Maybe
So
we
the only
can-
issue here, I'd say the only issue here is whether we pay them. Is that, can we just settle,
Yeah.
limit the issue to that?
Right, I don't think we should be paying them
That
for a
makes sense,
product, for a
Kelly?
product we don't get.
If Jane can think of a good way to use that money on the inventories, I mean, it's for the inventories, that's okay, but I just don't want to prepay again for this situation.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would agree.
so we're not prepaying. I don't think we need to vote, or do you think we need, I don't think, we're just not going to pay it. Is that okay?
It's fine with, that's all I need to know. And
Okay.
I will be talking fairly soon with Lori about doing something much bigger and better later in the year.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay. We've dealt with that issue there.
Then
I
I will,
have this lot line issue surveying cost with
Thanks,
Artemis
Kelly.
Jakowski. Is he,
Michael, you don't need me anymore.
Right. right, I don't think so.
Thanks.
Is Artemis here? Or somebody representing him or about this issue? What is this issue, I guess? Maybe somebody can just let me know. What
This resident has a concern that he asked specifically for time to express, but if he's not here, he can't express it.
Okay. Is there any information about that? I see some people here from the select board. And I see Diane here. Is there anything, are you showing up for that particular issue and you have anything to have had discussions with him about this surveying cost that you can shed some light on the issue?
I don't have anything. Maybe Sean might want to talk about it. I don't know. It was Jeannie that handled this with Mr. Jakowski.
Okay. Who else is here? George, do you have anything to say about that, or you're not here?
No, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay, fine. Or Marion? Okay, I
Listening.
guess we'll, oh, Marion, did you want to say something?
Nope, just listening.
Okay, fine. Then we'll see if, I guess, Anna, you can see whether he wants to come talk at another meeting. Or if he comes in later, we could see if we can fill it in later. Let's go to, let's see, I still see we have Dave. Do we want to, we have a violation at 8:50. Is somebody coming in for that, Anna?
Yes.
Okay. We have 7 minutes to do a few quick things, maybe.
Like, was there any of the previous discussions that we need to finish up, or do we feel that we finished them?
We do, but I think there's a little bit more time than that. I will bring up this issue that I guess that we added to the agenda that Marion actually sent about the the 40B on Lake Street, that that there's a site visit on June 14th, and then we're expected to give comments to Mass Housing on just 5 or 6 days later or something like that. And I think everybody's feeling, other boards have felt that this would be too tight a window, so that I'd like to move that the Conservation Commission make a request that the Select Board ask for a extension of 30 days on the due date of comments on that project. So we have time to work on that after we do the site visit.
Second.
I'll second, yeah.
Okay, any discussion?
Just a friendly amendment. It's not Lake Street, it's farm.
Oh, farm, yes. It's Farm Road. It's, what is it? I think 5565, I believe is the name of the project.
Mhm.
Michael, can I just ask you a question? Would it be the select board that would request that, or would it be like the planning board or ZBA? Because we really haven't been involved with that at all. So.
Oh, I can't remember. And Marion is, could maybe speak to that, because I thought, Marion, you said that we would send it to the
I'm
select
here,
board.
yes. George, thanks for bringing that up. I asked that same question of Eric today. We discussed it, and basically it's the select board that needs to make that request of DHCD for a 30-day extension. but to support our request, we'd like a simple letter from each of the major boards that will be weighing in on this to write to the select board saying we need a 30-day extension in order to give you an adequate report. That's all we needed to say, just something short. And then we can use that ammunition to request a 30-day extension from the state. That
Okay.
clear?
Fine, so so the motion stays as is, that it's a letter that we would write to the select board.
Right.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll have a roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jean,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And Anna, you've seen the email, whether you could just draft a letter that can be signed and sent over. Okay.
I can do that.
Okay, so we've dealt with that one here. We still have 4 minutes left. I will, is Sean still here? Yeah, I see Christina. I'll address I think the Beaver thing can be on East Goulding, maybe can be maybe addressed quite quickly in that. If I understand it correctly, after I was talking to Sean about some other business in town, not Concom, but we moved on to this of that on that, in terms of work to be done on the Beaver Dam there, that at this point, we're first going to wait to get an opinion before much more is done, to get an opinion from mosquito control, who offers that service to do the beaver deceivers or the levelers, whatever you want to call them, that before we decide how much more work needs to be done in that area on lowering the water or changing the removing material, that we would get them to go out there and assess what's needed and the prospects for them to do the service. So that I don't think much more needs to be done in the meanwhile until we get their feedback about whether they will help us with that problem. Is that a reasonable summary, Sean?
Yeah, that sums it up.
Okay.
We're not gonna touch it or spend any more time on it until we get somebody out there. And then, maybe it'll be one approval, breach it more, do something and add a pipe or whatever they think they can do.
So
Okay.
Sean, this overrides your email of earlier this week about the dingo.
Yeah, I think we'll wait. I mean, I still think it needs to happen at some point. Yeah, so we'll hang tight and get somebody out there to look at it.
And DPW is going to bring that person in.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, yeah, I mean, right now we're waiting on Central Mass Mosquito Control. We'll see if they have any interest.
That's what I mean. DPW is bringing in Central Mass Mosquito Control. It's not a conservation needs to bring them in.
Correct. Yeah, there's nothing more for you guys to do at the moment.
Great.
So there's a possibility that the emergency certification that exists now will run out and we'll just have to, put another one together.
Okay.
Yeah, the pond leveler would be, I don't know that a pond leveler would be an emergency cert. Would it? So I don't know.
But the bringing in the dingo, well, I'm not sure about.
That might be allowed. I don't know that maybe that would be allowed under the work to do the pond level because you can't go putting a pond level in a flooded pond. You basically need to get it drained and then you do it. It's debatable whether we can even put one in there because that's not really supposed to be a pond. It created a pond, but.
Well, it used to be the old ice, it used to be an ice thing, so. Okay, so we're on hold to see what Central Mosquito does, and it'll be interesting to see if we can avail ourselves of that new service.
Right.
Beavers.
I mean, the bigger issue is South Main Street culvert has something blocking it after this flooding, so we might be talking sooner rather than later anyway. That's much more significant.
Okay, let's see. Okay, it's 8:50. We are now moving on to try to keep all the business we got here. the violation of unpermitted work in the buffer zone of BVW at 21 Russet Hill Road. And I guess who's here on that issue?
The homeowner just popped in,
Oh.
and we also have their photos in the Dropbox that I hope people will look at and that I could pull up in a minute if people wanted. Ms. Hull, do you expect that the Thomas Elrott will also be joining the meeting?
He said that he intended to, so.
So maybe we should just.
Is that him? Is that, he's already there, I think.
Oh,
He's been waiting around.
all right, perfect.
Well, do you want to take the lead there or?
So I will just quickly summarize this. This is, I became aware that because of a call from another Sherborn resident that that it seemed like there was work being done in within 100 feet of a jurisdictional wetland, and I went out to the property and spoke with both of these people who are on the call, Ms. Hall, who's the homeowner, and Mr. Elrott, who was doing the work. Actually, we spoke later because he wasn't on site, but he came into the office and we spoke. And it sounds like from our conversation that they were not aware of the Conservation Commission's regulations. And also in the Dropbox, there is that map of the wetlands that just from DEP mapping of the wetlands, and also from my preliminary visit to the site, it really does appear that the grading in the backyard is in the buffer, if not in the wetland itself. But I did not do any delineation. Oh, thank you, Michael. So I issued a enforcement order just as the formal notification to the homeowner of this lack of compliance, and asking for erosion controls to go up, either a silt fence or a mulch sock. And also the plan had been to put sheep's fescue in, that was their plan, but in the enforcement order, I asked for there to be either stabilization with hay mulch or conservation seed mix. And the response has already been, they have put up a silt fence. There's a picture of that all the way around as asked. I have not been out to the site, but they sent these pictures. And as they can elaborate if they want, there has been hay mulch down, and the conservation seed mix is in the mail. So my final point to the commission is that it's now up to the commission as to whether this particular enforcement order is complete, or whether there are other things that the commission feels the need to ask of the homeowner. And I will turn back. That's all I have to say.
Anna, can you state for the record, please, what was there other work, unpermitted work besides grading? Did they remove trees? And
Yes.
also, for the record, what does the enforcement order ask of them at this point?
So yes, thank you for pointing that out. There were trees removed that I think I didn't see them before they were removed, but they stated that they were dead, and those appear to also be in the buffer zone within 100 feet of a bordering vegetated wetland. And what the enforcement order asked, I've already gone over the two things. two of the things, and the third thing was for them to come to the meeting. So there we are. They does that answer your question?
Yeah, I wonder if others would agree with me that it would be valuable to know where in the buffer zone this has been occurring. Is it in the no alteration zone, or is it in the outer 50-foot? So
I would concur with that. I think that would be helpful to know.
Yeah, that was my question too, was, we can see on the map that a lot of this property, more than half the property is actually, like, it appears to be wetlands. So I don't know if the homeowner can tell us like how close to the property line it's now been filled and regraded, or Anna, if you could get any sense at all of how much of the wetlands may have been filled and how much of it was just buffer.
I didn't delineate, and I didn't go out there with my auger. It was more just out there to say, hey, this looks like it's a possible violation. Let's please stop work.
Do we know how much fill was brought in?
So I could speak to what was there beforehand, which was that the reason that we were confused by the zone being in a wetland zone was that there was a play space that we'd taken out that was in basically the exact same area that you see up to where the silt is, the silt fence, that was actually partially developed. So there was a demarcated in the left corner down the hill, there are stairs down to our well. It's flattened. And then there was a large like play area that was basically like old wood with tarp and gravel that had just been overgrown. And so we actually wanted to remove that because it had fallen into disrepair. So it was already a somewhat pretty much, it was not like we were not bringing in fill to an area that was previous vegetation. Does that help?
So
I think that explains why my confusion as to when, I guess, why we didn't, well, one, I wasn't aware that we were within this wetland zone or that close to it. And then two, I wasn't aware of, it was confusing in that there was already basically where you see the base of this fence, a large play area in that corner, or what had been where they'd had a playground, the previous owners, like a play swing set with gravel, tarp under it, and a demarcated like big box marked out with wood at the periphery.
So a lot of this was already previously landscaped or developed area.
Right.
Is what you're saying, and part of the issue is to what extent there's some expansion of the landscaped area into what would be what we consider the sort of more previously sort of somewhat natural buffer zone to the wetlands. Mm-hmm. It's a little unclear, right? Part of without knowing where in this property here is the work done, how much, whether you went into wetlands or not, that were already that were previously undeveloped is one of the major concerns that we would have for what we have to protect, is to what extent it's an expansion of area into wetlands or buffer zone. Basically, there's the wetlands, and then there's 100-foot buffer zone with a little more, with extra protection around the first 50 feet of buffer zone to protect the wetlands even more better. And so we have to figure out how we decipher how much, whether you're expanding the lawn and landscaped areas into what was previously sort of natural land is the issue, is one of the bigger issues at hand. Bringing in fill sometimes is an issue too, because just to make sure it's the right quality fill and things like that, although that, but so Okay, so there's, it's a little, so some of the area that, a lot of the area you're saying was already landscaped or developed, and some of it might be, you might have expanded some of the area into some where maybe some, whoops. So there's the issue of how much was expanded into area that was natural before. And whether that's area that basically is on our jurisdiction or wetlands jurisdiction. It's really sort of the town and the state protecting it. Okay, so in all, we have to figure out how we, besides the enforcement, how do we move forward in terms of what they want to, you have a project that you want to do, and whether we got to figure out to what extent it's within what you've already altered from before, or whether you're asking to do more expansion of the work, and whether that could be permitted in the act, the Wetlands Protection Act. Okay, what do we think? What should be the next? I mean, obviously, the enforcement order is one thing. The question is what? How would they want to move forward with a project? And the question is, how do we get it? Whether it needs to be, whether we need to get a delineation of the wetlands so that we could figure out where it is that you're doing anything, whether you're out, because you're clearly doing work in our jurisdiction. It's a matter of how much, let's see whether other people agree, whether it's, there's probably work in the jurisdiction because the buffer zone probably comes all around in here. It might even come all across here, and you're probably working around here.
I looked up a little closer at Mass Mapper, and the 50 to 100 comes like, I mean, the 100 comes about into where it starts to be light gray, I think. I mean, like light green. So yeah, about,
yeah,
it's quite a bit. Actually, a lot of it, but not all. It looks like.
Please don't forget that this map and Mass Mapper are notoriously inaccurate.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I would agree, Michael, that I think it would be a good idea to have the wetland delineated, because otherwise we don't even know how much of a violation has happened.
Right, and what's permittable and not in
Right.
terms of that.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Essentially, it looks like, and see whether other people disagree, that given the proximity to all the wetlands there, that you need to come for some sort of permit, whether it's going to be an RDA or an NOI, depending on how much more work you're doing, that and your proximity to the wetlands, that these kind of projects require some sort of permitting. And I guess, and it's a little trickier now because we don't know, you'd have to say how much was because yeah, it's a matter of even the erosion control. Obviously, we sometimes, if it's just an RDA, it is a matter of just getting good erosion control and protections there. It depends how much you want to do, and that you come forward and work with whether to say with the agent that I guess we're gonna need a delineation, because it's clear that it's in a jurisdictional area, and you're gonna have to work with a consultant to just get it delineated, and then we could decide on what level of permitting would be needed and whether it's a lot of information or less.
I guess I have a question. I mean, we've gone through this before with other homeowners, and when there's a violation, can the homeowner come back to us basically with an RDA, which then triggers, doing the wetland delineation? I don't know, Jean, I know we've dealt with this before, right?
We typically don't. We typically are not looking for delineation when a project goes through the process with just an RDA.
Yeah.
But it's a judgment that usually falls preliminarily to the agent. However, we don't expect the agent to do a delineation. So if a delineation is done because we need more information, I don't think until we have that information, that it's at that point that we would come to a decision about which type of permit.
So are you saying we would just do it as part of the enforcement order?
Yeah, I think so.
That's a friend, yeah, it's considered, it sounds bad, but it's like a friendly enforcement order. But the question is whether Anna should go out there and spec out a little bit of roughly where the wetlands are. And just get some initial preliminary sense of how much is in jurisdiction or not. Is whether that's an appropriate next step before just even requiring I mean, it looks likely that a delineation is going to be probably needed, but I guess at the first stage would be just to get to have Anna and whatever help she needs to go out there and do just an initial cut. of-
Michael, what is the point of that initial step?
Just to make sure that we're looking at a map that's very imprecise, just to make sure that we're clear. unless
Joyce
you
has
feel you already
looked at
are
the-
clear.
It
I
kinda
sent
seems-
some pictures to Joyce, and from vegetation that she could see in the photos, she was confident that this is in our jurisdiction. So would that answer the question? I also think in terms of very limited staff resources at the moment, that if we can skip an initial step, since I have already been to this site, that I would really appreciate that.
I would concur with that.
And I'm also
Yeah.
thinking, Michael, of the time, why drag this out on this homeowner? You know, like, let's just cut to the chase and go with a professional. I mean, let them hire a professional consultant and get us a delineation.
Yeah, it looks like if that is possibly, I don't know if that's skunk cabbage. I'm looking at the photo here where the wetlands are here.
May I ask, I mean, our entire plan was pretty much to just actually remove the overbrush and the old play space. We regraded, there's a steep drop off that was where we regraded. That's not in this photo because I have small kids and I don't want them, they called it the roller coaster, going off of it in the backyard. But really, other than that, we had just hoped to basically put down grass seed and we can put down the conservation mix. And we don't really want to do any further work. Like that was the plan, was actually to make it as low, a little safer for the kids, to take out the old play space because it's actually was overgrown. And there was a completely dead tree that didn't have any pine needles in 2 years that we've been there. And then to just kind of put in, we had originally planned on sheep's fescue for low water, low maintenance, basically we don't want to maintain anything. We just want it to be safe, not a roller coaster. And actually we were hoping for a plan that looks like a natural transition into the woods. That's a little bit less steep, shall we say, at the initial drop off. And so, I mean, I guess, it's probably good for the future for us to have a clear sense of exactly where, what would require, what if we were looking to do other projects back there. But I'm wondering if if we can go with the conservation mix, what other, if we decided that there was, or if you decided, I'm sorry, that there was, that we were within the buffer zone, we're not really looking to do more work, shall we say.
I guess it depends how much it depends on whether within the enforcement order, the extent that there's if they're doing conservation mix and letting it go back to something more natural with the conservation mix, that's low maintenance, whether there is a work plan. I can't tell whether as commissioners, we should just go do a little site visit.
I'm always up for a site visit.
Because whether if it was existing altered buffer before, that's just being, that's obviously there's been some grading as an issue, but whether but whether the homeowner doesn't want to keep it as a landscaped and well-maintained area, whether that would still give us.
I would say it was
comfort of the home.
landscaped but not maintained, shall we say?
But you want that.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe there's a way within the enforcement order to do something, and we should reassess this after a site visit. And you marking out what you actually want to do, where the areas are. Courtney and Carol.
I don't know if the homeowner has any pictures of what it used to look like that might help us determine, the alteration where things were. Because like normally you would come for a permit before you did something like this. So now we need to permit it after the fact. So it's just, we have to just figure a few things out.
Yeah, and I would add to that, that was one of the reasons that I was asking about how many truckloads of fill had been brought in, or loam, or whatever it was, because that gives us something of an indication of how much changes were made. So I don't know, do you know how many truckloads you brought in?
Thomas, you're muted.
Leland, that was addressed to you.
No, Thomas is.
First contractor is there, I believe.
Thomas, you're muted, Thomas.
It was one truck, 24 yards, I believe. Thomas can tell me.
Thomas is getting technical
appropriate.
assistance.
My teenage daughter's sorry. So with the hulls, I'm Thomas from Lynch Landscape, and the objective of this project was that it was a playset area, but I also assumed that there was like an old shed or something in the corner, if you could see where the two trees are. And
picture here.
Yeah, down below. So yeah, these yep, right there. So there was a shed pad there, or a playset area, probably 12 by 20 or 24, and we removed that. And where the grade is coming down on the more of the picture with the stabilization hay, on that, the grade break was farther over. It was right about at the shadow line of this tree.
Oh, you're talking about here.
What do you mean by the grade break?
Dropped off about 4 feet. So all we did is we pulled the upper grade down into that area, which was all glacial till, just native sandy soil. And then we brought in 24 yards of screened loam and just covered it. And then the intention was to stabilize the soil with a fine fescue mix of either sheep's fescue and also maybe some shoeings and so forth, and just let it grow like a long rough. I do this often with properties just to make it low maintenance. It does not require nitrogen, additional nitrogen. It's just, there's no starter fertilizer. It's just a natural kind of way to stabilize the soil and aesthetically pleasing. I didn't realize though, I mean, I did look for skunk cabbage. I did look for, a riparian zone. I have a degree in physical geography and work with a lot of biogeography. So I love plants. I love removing invasives such as bittersweet, which was all within this area. Buckthorn, we pulled out all the buckthorn, and we were just trying to restore it so that the kids were pretty much, when I first visited the site, they were tripping and falling down this little cliff. So the intention was just to soften this, and the holes use the front yard for the kids to play in and so forth. And this was just a transition into the woods.
So so the grading was sort of smoothed out in there.
Yeah, and that's
I
all
would see
native.
that.
There's only maybe 3 inches of loam on top of that.
And then
As
how
a
much,
steep-
if you like for the grading, once you pulled a bunch of that soil down closer toward the wetlands, was that like a half a foot? How much of a grade difference do you think there was down there?
So what was existing, it was a cut grade. Somebody, I guess the previous homeowner had probably brought in an excavator or some sort and did graded out a flat area to put the pad in there for the play set, right?
Okay.
So the kids, so what was left was this open grade cut of glacial till, right? And so and there's like actually an irrigation pipe at the time. So it's like the kids would go down that, hit the irrigation pipe, trip and fall down the hill. So I just tried to alleviate that issue for the client.
So I actually, how about if we agree to move this forward? That we agree to a site visit. for
That'd be
people,
great.
so
And
that we could
I'd like to be
basically see whether we can do this in the context of an enforcement order, and it's more a matter of how the landscaping is done in this area here that might be proximal, that's had the most alteration. But maybe it was already altered, but maybe actually could be improved with the sort of with what they're talking about doing, or whether
Yeah,
it's
and I already
conservation
ordered-
mix.
I ordered the conservation mix.
And that could be an improvement over what was there.
And I've been able to track down, I have a photo of what it looked like beforehand. I'll try to send that in.
Okay, so to move forward, do we
I'm
feel
in favor
comfortable
of
with?
before scheduling a site visit, I'm in favor of there being a delineation so that we can know what part of the buffer zone activity took place in.
I agree with that. I think it's just too hard for us to condition without knowing where the delineation is.
Right, but I think that, I guess the reason I'm hesitating is that if this was already altered area to begin with, and there hasn't been an expansion, we would not require that of another project if they came in. That's why I'd rather go look and see what was there previously before requiring that. That, because we wouldn't do that for somebody else.
Well, we know that trees were cut.
Well, we could see what that means. What was a dead tree? I don't know how many live trees were cut. We could see what is done there.
After
But that's
haggling for weeks on another project based on, where in the buffer zone activities were going to take place, I think it's important to know how
Yeah,
close
but
we
these
are
are
to the wetland.
already, but it's already altered area, which is a big difference to me.
But the question of expansion hasn't been solved, Michael. Trees were cut. That's,
Well, that's why I would rather figure that out before we push the other one, because that's a big difference for us in terms of that. And in terms of what,
I would
so-
like you to please.
I know you would like it, we just don't agree.
Can you do a straw poll, Michael? You're famous
Yeah,
for your
we're gonna
straw
have to do
polls. Do a
that.
straw poll on the delineation.
Because, right, I mean, we're just, maybe we're just not going to agree, because I would argue strongly that if it's not an expansion of an altered area, even if a tree was cut or two, that's not something we would require of an applicant, I think, if they had come in before the project was done.
I think it was, I don't know, just point of clarification, I believe it was 3 trees.
Okay, but, so I think I'm trying to be consistent with what we would
I
have.
can
if-
show you what the tree looked like.
Yeah.
If somebody would let me share content.
You could do that, but I guess I'm saying.
It doesn't, oh yeah, if it doesn't help, then it
I'm
doesn't
not
matter,
sure.
but
Whatever it is, I just feel like we would not require it for, if it was an art, somebody was doing stuff in their yard, but that we would not require that, but.
Michael, what do you say?
Go straw poll, yeah, what? Say again?
Yeah, I think you should do a straw poll. You're famous for those, but also, are you saying that we don't require a delineation typically when somebody comes before us with a project? Because that's not my experience.
I'm talking about for RDAs. People have come to us with RDAs.
Okay,
for
but how do
doing
we
work.
know whether this is an RDA or not?
We don't know
Because-
where in the buffer zone it was.
Right,
And
exactly.
we also, even with other projects, maybe you feel differently in history, that if somebody, even if it's in the buffer zone, if it's already altered lawn, for example, then we deal with it differently than if it was natural buffer. So that is a big, what I think has been a differentiator for us in terms of the permitting process. But I'll
Yes,
let
but
Courtney
don't we
speak.
usually have the delineation? It seems to
No,
me.
we don't
by
always have
both
it.
Cases we do have the delineation.
Right, I agree.
I don't think we always do.
No, not always, not an emphatic always, you're right. But the majority of the time, we have the delineation.
Do you see Courtney's?
Yes, I know, I was gonna let her go, but not for RDAs, and people done it, but Courtney, go.
Well, so Anna was saying that Joyce already may have looked at the site. I mean, did she have more insight? Like,
No, just the photos. She agreed
Okay.
that it was likely in the buffer zone.
Right, okay. I mean, so, but in terms of working in altered areas of the buffer zone, like what, I'm just trying to be consistent, like what things have we permitted in the past via RDA, like grading, tree
A
removal?
lot of septic work and.
But that's for a septic. This is
Septic works
for-
are in the regulations separately
Right.
Yep.
that can be under RDA.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is not a septic. It was.
Well, I guess we don't see a lot of landscaping work in
Right.
it because it's just in their backyard and they don't think twice. So we don't often see the permitting. But I don't think that, whatever, I guess we're not going to necessarily all agree. And I guess we have to come to give some guidance to these people. And I would rather do a site visit before we require anything, but I go through what other people feel, whether they feel they need a delineation before doing even a site visit to figure out the next steps. Jean, Carol, Courtney, Cindy, pipe in.
Would like to see a delineation before any other steps are taken.
I would second that. I would like to see a delineation. I think a delineation clarifies things.
Are other people going to chime in? Do I have to call your names out?
I was looking back at our regulations and in 7.3, which is RDA 7, it says 7.3.1 review period, resource area boundary determination. Resource area boundary delineation determination shall be reviewed at the sole discussion of the commission. There's nothing that says we can't have a delineation.
Oh, I'm not saying we
It's
can't.
actually in our regulations.
I'm not saying we can't. I just think we can possibly figure this out without it.
Well,
That's all I'm
I
saying.
disagree. I think that it will be very difficult for us to tell this homeowner how to condition this if we literally don't know where our regulatory powers end.
Yes, I think that.
In
I
other
think
words,
that
what
I'm not
if
sure it's going to come out
there's-
any differently. I'm not sure the outcome would be any different that they
Well,
want.
I
that's
like
okay.
I like the
Beat up
idea of
the DNS
precision.
with
So
this
in the straw
line.
poll, I'm in favor of the delineation.
I mean, but my concern is it looks like this is definitely in this buffer zone. And, according to what Anna's telling me, this is going up to, if not into the wetland. And it's difficult for us to go and look and see if wetland was filled in without, somebody checking the soils and stuff. I just.
Okay, fine. I don't mind. I could be outvoted, so to speak. It's not the end of the world for that. We just have to get clear and give guidance to the homeowner. Okay.
So it sounds like we're amending the enforcement order to ask for a professional wetland delineation.
Sounds like that.
That seems to be the majority of people who want that. So, to the applicant or to the Hulls, or I'm not sure what your name is, whether you're Leland, that yes, the commission would like to see a delineation of the wetlands there so that we can then figure out how to do how to best permit the process. It could still be, I guess we could still do it under an enforcement order.
Does that need to be
or-
amended? Do you need, do you need to vote on that officially for me to be able to amend it?
No. Just amend it and then we'll ratify the amended version.
Okay.
But I guess in terms of the next step, I'll ask the commissioners that whether it could still be permit the work in terms of saying what work, how to modify or how to best do the work in the buffer zone, that we could do that through an enforcement order. That would be part of it, or as an option versus an RDA or something else.
I've never heard of permitting work The reason it has an enforcement order is because the work occurred without a permit, and you're saying it doesn't need a permit?
No, okay, I'm just checking
Yeah,
where we had
so-
that. So then we would just decide whether we do an RDA or an NOI or something like
Right.
that.
I
Okay.
think Neil sought some clarification from DEP on our use of enforcement orders and NOIs after the fact. And, you know, if we're permitting work, we should be issuing a permit, not
Okay.
just like an enforcement order.
So to the applicant or to the Hulls and Thomas. Need a wetland delineation, and then we could figure out what kind of permit to grant to sort of complete the work.
Okay, so I regularly work in Sudbury. That's where we're based out of. So Lori Capone, I did a big wetland restoration for a hazardous waste issue a couple years ago. So would I just go to one of those consultants that came out to the site to do that? How do I go about getting this
Sure.
moved forward for the Hulls? Because this was completely unintentional,
Oh,
obviously.
yeah, no, we accept that. That's clear.
Yeah. So what are the next steps for us? Do we contact a general consultant? Do we go through the mass mapper? Was this map created through remote sensing? Was it created through?
You need somebody
an
to get on
actual
the
survey of
ground.
Wetlands?
You need a wetland scientist who goes on the ground and just does a delineation
Okay.
and puts on a map there, and then we can see what the next steps would be for permitting.
They look at a combination of the vegetation and the soils, and that tells them where the wetland ends.
Perfect.
And
Thank
I
you.
guess you'll know for the future what the bounds are of anything you want to do there. So this will be definitive there. Because it's not in, sometimes we have that from past work, but there is.
I have a
nothing-
list, it's pretty outdated, but I do have a list of people who've done work in the town, that kind of work, that I will send to you.
Okay, I have some excellent sources as well.
Yeah. I
Oh,
imagine
okay.
you do.
Okay, great.
Okay, you have any questions? Homeowner? Okay, then,
Thank you for your time.
sure. Nope, sorry, it took us a little while. to
Thank
wrestle
you.
with these things. It always takes a while to
Okay.
wrestle with some of the
Thank you for
complicated
coming.
ones.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on.
Bye-bye.
Let's go back to, okay, nothing else is
Who's
scheduled.
share-
What?
Who is screen sharing?
No, that's probably me. It's more fun than looking at faces here. Let's see. Let's go back to, how about we go back to the Forest and Trail? I mean, to Town Forest.
I will be back in 2 minutes. Feel free to
Okay,
continue without me.
okay, do we have a?
I'm
let's
taking a
see.
break as well. 2 minutes.
Okay,
Okay, let's take a
Minute
2-minute break then, if there are two of us leaving.
okay.
We'll be back at 9:30.
Okay, fine.
Michael, when you get back to the town forest issue, I did keep track of all of the discussion points. So if you want me to summarize the conditions that I heard when the
Sure.
group is back together, I'd be happy to do that from my
Fine,
notes.
that'll be fun. Yeah, that comes out. That'll be a preview of the minutes, because that's also for Anna to hear. Because basically those are the words that we'll literally put in the order of conditions. But thank you for that, and we'll do that way. Let's see, I don't think we have sort of findings. Let me get something here.
still don't see Mr. Jakowski, I guess, huh?
I guess next time.
Someone was on by that name early in the meeting.
Really?
Oh,
I was writing names down early on, and someone by that name was on the meeting.
Briefly, I guess, huh?
Must have been.
Yeah, thank you.
hmm.
And thank you for doing this tonight.
It's interesting.
As we wrestle with all these little odds and ends, not odds and ends, wrestle with these, trying to make sure the permitting process is done in a reasonable way.
I've seen similar on the planning board, just, you know, a person comes in, a homeowner comes in and has already done some things on scenic roads. Very similar situation, you know.
Yeah.
Didn't realize there was a requirement. Someone
Yeah,
else reported it. Yeah.
No, it's tricky to figure out how to best work it for all sides.
There's so many wetlands in Sherborn. It's hard for the residents. Of course, they don't realize it.
Yeah, the same is said for scenic roads when people alter their stone walls, you know. It's like
Yeah.
they didn't even know that they were on a designated road.
Yeah.
Michael, what did you want to continue talking about when we
I
start?
wanted to finish up
Forest and
the
Trails.
town forest.
Oh,
We all
forest.
back here? Okay, good. We're all back. Hearing's closed, but I essentially, before I present the motion, I think we're all on the same page that essentially this project can be permitted with the conditions we talked about before I make the formal motion. Does anybody?
Michael, do you want,
My understanding.
for clarity, how about if we go through the conditions, just so people know exactly what they're, I mean, I think we had a lot of discussion, so.
Yes, no, we're gonna have, Steph has offered to do a summary from the things there, but I will, actually, maybe we'll do that before I make the formal motion and we'll just incorporate into the motion the conditions that we'll talk about.
I think
But Steph, take a run at it and we'll see if we all on the same page there.
Okay, I probably have some of the terms wrong because I'm
Yeah,
not normally in these
no,
meetings.
No worries.
If you get it too good, we're gonna hire you for, we'll force you to have more. No, we have somebody in line.
So I have that 12-foot tall snags are to be left upon removing the trees.
Mhm.
The easy ones first, and hand removal of bittersweet that's choking out the trees.
Right.
And then regarding mowing, I kind of restructured the conditions the way I was thinking about them, tried
Sure.
to restructure them in a way that could be written up this way if you chose to do so. So in the long term, within the 200-foot riparian areas, mowing shall be restricted to 1 to 2 mowings per growing season, minimizing the extent of mowed area and maintaining a 20-foot wide vegetated buffer adjacent to the stream. So that's the long-term goal, yeah? And then I don't know what the right width
Okay,
is.
that sounds
Okay.
actually not bad. With the long-term
Okay.
goal, yes.
Then initially, to control invasives and establish native meadow, the first 2 years, the entire riparian area may be mowed 3 times per year, late May, late June, end of summer.
Mhm.
Following the second year, evaluation of the Conservation Commission, following evaluation of the Conservation Commission and by written permission of the agent, the initial mowing regime may be extended for up to 2 additional years in designated portions of the riparian area.
Sounds right.
That sounds right to me too.
Very good.
Like a really good summarization. Thank you. That's awesome.
Good. We have the order of conditions partially written.
Can we add when it says, well, I'd like, as part of discussion on this, it says, she said in the long term, 1 to 2 mowings per growing season. Do we want to specify? I know at the Barber, we have specified the mowings are earlier in the spring or also as late as something like August, I think. Do you?
We've even gone later than that, I think.
No, Carol, the fields at Barber are mowed only once a year after October 1st.
October 1st.
Yeah.
So that's my question. Do we want that to be the the final
Well,
mowing?
that's very specific to the fact that the fields amount to 10, 12 acres in total. And the hope is waiting to mow until October would establish grassland nesting bird habitat. And I don't think we're trying to do that here.
So
Because
I
the
I
area-
guess my question is timing. Do we want to add timing?
I don't think, I
Is
guess
there
I'm okay
value to
without
that?
having the timing because I don't think they're gonna want to do it.
I might suggest doing it, though. I mean, one thing about meadows is that when you mow has an impact on the species.
So what
there is an
timing would you
advantage-
suggest?
I mean, there is an advantage to doing it in some type of sometime like September, when a lot of these species have already set seed and their seed would fall onto the,
So we're still talking about end summer, basically.
well, September is later than end of summer.
Yeah. Okay, what do we want to do? Let's pick, do we want to say early, that there's an early spring or a late May? How do we want to specify it? I don't mind, I could go either way, but if we want to specify, what are the specifics we're going to want to put in there?
I mean, the other possibility is very early spring, I guess, to whack back any remaining bittersweet that has cropped up over the previous summer.
I just want the words. We all agree on the concept. The question is what
Please
specific.
keep in mind that this probably won't be issued until June 1
Right.
at the earliest.
Oh, I'm referring to the long-term mowing.
This is the long term. We're
regime.
only talking about the long term conditioning.
Why don't we say early spring, and then that'll hopefully will cut back some of the woodies, and then if that doesn't work,
Okay, so we can have early spring and what? End of summer? I just want words.
Yeah,
early fall.
Which
I'd
do we
say
go
early
in?
fall.
Do we want to say end of spring, summer, early fall? Do we want to put that in there? I just want to get it.
I'd put early fall because I know there's a lot of goldenrod out there, and goldenrod can be very tough, and it's good here in Sherborn. So I'd say early fall, because then the
Okay.
goldenrod is.
So we're modifying, adding to the long-term goal one there. We're basically saying the 1 to 2 mows would be, if 2 mows, early spring and early fall. I guess
I
we'd
share my
always have
screen?
we'd always have the early fall one, because right, if we have one mowing a year, it would always be early fall, right?
yes.
So basically it would be, it's a matter of whether it's the early spring one, whether that's still decided.
Did you hear the request to share the screen?
You should have permission.
Yeah, you should just do it.
Go for it.
I just didn't want to do it without.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
we're a little, maybe
Yeah.
not.
Okay, can you see it?
Well, it's a little small.
Okay, no problem. Just a second. So here's the mowing. So in the long term, within the 200-foot riparian areas, 1 to 2 mowings per growing season, early fall with an additional mowing in early spring if needed.
Sounds good. And you could just riparian area that's not plural. And you can capitalize it, I think, actually.
Oh, yeah, you guys can,
Yeah.
don't copy paste.
Well, I was hoping to get it as close to that as possible.
Yeah, sure. No worries. Minimize the extent of mowed area and
Right.
maintain is this 20 foot? I just had XX.
We didn't really decide.
We didn't decide. Do we want to put sort of is the goal to maintain I guess the question is, do we even want to put feet in there versus just leave it unspecified?
No, I like that idea to ferment for a while, and I wouldn't want to go smaller than 15 feet wide.
Why don't we
Okay,
start with-
at least, you could say, and maintain at least a 15 foot. Put at least 15 feet is a long-term goal. Okay.
Sounds good.
I mean, vegetated buffer, it's a little trickier. That's somehow we're saying a vegetated buffer is different than a field.
Is it
well,
unmowed?
It's yes, I guess I'd like to say that it's a unmowed, right? So we differentiate it.
I don't agree with not mowing it at all, because, I mean, maybe other people think that's fine for it to grow up into forest.
Then the question is what do we want, what differentiates that vegetated area than from the field next to it? As to why to even have that?
Because
we
it
can drop it.
provides the functions of a vegetated buffer for most of the growing season.
But how do you differentiate a vegetated buffer from the field itself? in terms
What
of.
activities are done there? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we actually define it, so.
Well, the field is vegetated, right?
Yeah,
Even
the
if it's
field's
mowed.
vegetated too.
So how is the
So
buffer
they're
different?
going to mow the field in the long-term plan twice a year. The vegetated buffer can either not be mowed at all or can be mowed only once at the end of the year, the end of the growing season.
Okay, so it's at least a 15-foot, that is. Or unmowed, I guess, you can put in there.
Michael,
Yes,
what do you do if the invasives just keep growing up that area?
well, there'll always be the ability to remove invasives. You can hand remove them around the trees there. You're talking about the long-term in this.
The 15 or 20-foot area.
Well,
We end up with all
it's a
invasives
goal.
like we have now.
But we still have the last condition, which is like, if it's still there, we give you permission to keep mowing.
Right. It's based, this is the long-term goal.
All right.
So hopefully we could achieve it. If not, then it won't be practical and they'll have to keep doing it. So there's the flexibility there to keep doing it.
We're trying to balance a couple of things, Dave. We are sympathetic to wanting to control the invasives, but we're trying to preserve some habitat value next to the stream.
Yeah, I understand that. It's
I think there's the flexibility here to go make it work for, because right, we don't want it to be. Although to the extent that there's some invasives in there, that they still have some value too, as long as it would be great to just see if we can get the majority of it just being a nice field again. So that would still cover most of it. Okay, so we got all this. Okay. Okay. Getting a little cleaning up.
Sorry.
Okay. Are we all happy with this? We have this covers all the conditions?
May I jump in?
Oh, there's a grading issue here that basically is just going to be, there's erosion control as in the plan. And then there's, I'll get in a second there. And that there's basically, we're going to just say that the project is basically doing just leveling of the parking area and the road.
I don't think it was leveling. It was more like, oh, I see what you mean. Like, I mean,
But basically, there's going to be addition that there's,
just
I
grading.
would call it leveling activities because, or grading maybe, should be minimized and it should be, it's literally leveling of the field, of the road and the parking area. Limiting, basically, it's restricted to the road and the parking area.
Is it clear? It's not clear to me on the plan, but I wonder whether it's clear to both the commission and the town forest committee how far up the road the mowing is going to be. It sounded like it was decided, or it was proposed that it be that stone wall in the back of the south side be continued across.
Right.
And that serve as the boundary across on the north side. Is that?
It's on the west side, literally, that west side there, that line that goes across.
So Anna, you're saying you want that explained in words, yes?
Yes, I just want to make sure that was something that I mean, I can write it too.
You could write it in the word, the condition will be that the western boundary of the mowing will be the stone wall continued northwards. So
okay. And then what about how far the grading and leveling goes up the path?
It's
outside foundation.
Okay.
If you look at the plan, there's a foundation, stone foundation. It doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's up near where the future gate is.
Yeah, it's basically up to the gate.
Gate is actually further down towards the parking lot.
Okay.
That's the fire road. That has to be
Yeah.
maintained for the fire department.
Yep.
Okay.
So the road will be graded up to that stone wall, basically in line with that stone wall.
Yeah, I mean,
Efficient.
the trucks, the fire trucks that would get put in there would be the big heavy duty trucks. It's not the smaller ones.
Okay, so they'll be okay. I mean, maintenance of the road itself is I think, well, I don't want to go there. Okay, so
Do
we're
we-
all right here.
I have a couple questions that we kind of touched on, but I don't think we made a decision about. So one is, do we think there need to be any protections for tree roots? When I asked Joyce, it sounded like she didn't think there'd be enough regrading to hurt the tree roots. I want to ask people if others had that impression, or should we write something to the extent of saying that grading shall be minimized, restricted, and avoid damage to existing tree roots?
You could stick it in that grading thing there, leveling line there, stick at the end of, after the parking area, you could stick in and limit any impact to surrounding trees, nearby trees.
Because they're fairly big. And then the second thing I want to ask about is looking at, I have the printed copy. So there was the big maple tree along the street. And when Joyce was talking about it, she said that one option was to limit back to, so that it doesn't fall on the lines there because it's alive. I just wanted to know if the commission had a thought about that. I do always feel like if the tree is alive, I don't know how it looks big. The canopy looks quite big in the drawing. And so we talked about 12-foot snags upon removing the dead trees. But in the case of the maple closest to the street, I wonder if that can just be limbed back. If it's healthy, it shouldn't fall down on anybody.
Right, exactly.
Dave?
I think limbing it up is a great idea.
Let me
I've
just-
had that done numerous times.
Hold on one second, please wait. Dave, we
Yeah.
were in the field, we talked about the fact that Sean would probably just cut back that tree from the overhang over the road.
It's basically up to the tree warden.
Yes, it's basically, that tree is in the right of way of the street. And they have to make a decision, but the preference, they look like they would possibly just limit. But
I hope so, because by the way,
but I don't think we can mess with that.
I think Main Street is a scenic road too. by the way.
Whatever it is, I think it's a little, I'd say it's outside that we have to defer to their decision as to what they want to do on that tree. And they will make a decision about what it is. And there was talk about whether they can just limit versus, but it's so close and hanging over the road that it's not something I think we should weigh in on.
And you know what? You don't have to be too sad about it because it is a Norway maple and it is.
Oh.
It is. I'm sure it's shedding. That there were other little baby Norway maples around. So.
We should put in the first line here, there are 2 dead trees. There are 2 dead trees that will be removed. We
Well,
specify.
maybe we want to amend that and say, remove the Norway maple.
I'm not
Okay.
sad about removing a Norway maple.
Let's, oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
well,
well,
I don't want to go there.
Terribly invasive.
Okay. Okay. I'm about to make a motion. so we can
Wait,
move on.
what's the erosion control piece? I totally missed that. I heard you say it, Michael, but
There's erosion as per the plan.
and then did we change this to early fall? Should this one be early fall as well in the 3 mowings, Jean?
Late summer.
So when it's 3 mowings, it's late May, late June, and end of summer. And then when it's
Right.
2 mowings, it's early fall and early spring.
Right.
Okay, they're different intentionally. All right.
Okay, I'm making a motion that we approve this project subject to the findings that this project of improving the road and a parking garage and the parking spots and restore management and restoration of the fields in riverfront area.
As well as plan to limit the spread of invasives.
Limit the plant spread of invasives. That will not, let's see, where is it? I'm reading from something else here since we didn't have it prepared. Will not create an adverse effect on the wetlands and the riverfront area. That and subject to all of the conditions that we have discussed. I'm
Second.
gonna leave it at that.
I'm sorry, I can't see all your faces now. Who just seconded?
Jean,
Thank you.
Any discussion? Michael, I, roll call vote. Michael, I, Jean,
aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
Okay, project is approved as conditioned. I 5-0 and go forth. We'll get you an order of conditions and you can start on the Burke after the appeal period is over.
Two things. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And the other thing is, when we have to wait for all the conditions before we can mow?
The
Yes,
appeal period is,
yes. There's an appeal period that you have to state appeal period once we go.
Oh,
the
right,
order
right.
that you have to wait through.
Yeah.
And then everything, then you could start March 4th. And do
Great.
the work.
March
And you'll be-
4th. but
March
that's not-
4th. That's my birthday.
So
That's yours, mine's March 3rd.
just to follow up on what Dave is saying here. So I have a huge backlog. I have 21 days to issue this, and then there's a 10 business day period after that. So we're talking about the 10 business day period ending somewhere in mid to late June. Is that too late for them to just get the, like, do you want to somehow, I don't know.
I mean, do the initial mowing right away?
No, we can't do that.
No. It is what it is. So you're gonna have to wait, unfortunately, Dave. I
Hey,
guess it's,
Do our best.
Yeah,
we'll-
I think the other day I looked, it was 2008 was when I first started this.
okay, so you can wait another month. Okay, so, okay, I'm just gonna conclude it there so we can move on. But,
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all so much.
yes,
Bye
no,
now.
Have a good
yes, I'm
one.
glad we worked it all out here. I look forward to seeing how it actually works out. It'll be
Yeah.
interesting to see what you can restore.
Yeah, we're gonna see.
Yeah, nope, that'll be fun and we'll learn together.
All right.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on here. Let's see if we can wrap up things here. What do we got here? Let's go to site issues. We've already dealt with Beavers. We got 11 Goulding Street East.
So the planting plan has come in the form of that PDF that we had before the hearing was closed, and that's called Rain Garden, etc. And then also we now, as of today, have an even more updated letter from Mark Albers in taking into consideration some of the feedback that I gave, but he has concluded, here, I'll share my screen if I may. So this is in Dropbox. This is it's called updated. It's the 0 notice of NOI cover letter. So I want to draw your attention to, I haven't had a chance to review this very thoroughly. He just sent this afternoon, but he said, I don't want to commit to a specific number of plants. So my question to the commission is, from what you've seen of this letter, of course, you haven't had a chance to review it either, but this letter and the PDF rough sketch that we had before the hearing was closed, is that enough of a planting plan? And at what point will you be considering it to approve it? I haven't actually issued the order of conditions yet, but I think that this is a separate. So do you have enough information? Do you need more information? And I don't know whether you're going to consider it tonight or whether you're going to consider it another time.
I haven't
Yes,
had
I
a chance
haven't.
to see it.
Yeah, I haven't read the letter either, and the question is whether,
It came in late, so I haven't had a chance.
I mean, the issue is whether he's gonna, before he actually does it, does he say anything about, before he actually embarks on doing it, whether he'll come up with more specifics at the time? when he actually goes to, is he ready to actually do it right now? And when he actually goes to install it, will he then have?
I think he's proposing this as, like, we haven't given him any further guidance. So I think he's proposing this as, this is the planting plan, because he, you know, this is an individual resident who doesn't do planting plans on the regular, and this is a relatively small project. So he doesn't, this is what he thinks that he's providing to us.
And I saw the comments that that Courtney offered you and that you passed on to him. Did he incorporate changes based on those comments?
Doesn't look like it.
I think maybe the sizing of the plants was new, but
I
or
still
was-
saw the Carex blacka or whatever. That's not a native sedge.
Which one was it? Carex what?
It's FLACCA.
Oh, there's a lot of Carex there. You know, there was a question of, is there enough detail here? I think there's quite a bit of detail, and I went on the site visit, and it's a fairly straightforward, not very big area.
So we're okay with it, except for the fact that, we have any concerns about species? That we're worried about whether it's native enough or versus other kind of things? Because my only concern is that the species selection is appropriately native, and then I would be fine with this.
I mean, I would say I actually have practically everything in the rain garden flowers except golden Alexanders is growing in my backyard now, but not necessarily in a rain garden.
All right, he has to have some success. It has to have a growth. It has to survive in order to get its certificate of compliance. So I'm fine with what is, as opposed to, unless we have concerns that some plant that's not native is going to be, whether we just want to make sure that we give them the right guidelines about that, and then let them go ahead and he could submit the final planting list when he does it, or when he's about to do it, I guess, or order them. And I'd be fine with
as
that.
far as I can tell, everything except for the one that you noticed, Courtney, I think everything else is native, or I've seen the garden in the woods, and
yeah,
they're all
Okay,
native.
so we just
I
have to
think
say
this
that.
is the final planting list, unless we ask him for something more.
Yeah,
So the question is whether we ask him to drop one of it, just to get the closure here.
Well,
Yes,
he can't include the non-native
right.
sedge.
So it's just a matter of telling him
drops
everything
it
is
out.
fine except for that.
If he drops the Carex, then he should replace it with another native.
Or
Well,
he
to
could-
tell you the truth, he has such a very, very long list.
It's
of
like too
varieties.
much almost.
Yeah, I don't think he has to replace it. Just ask
Yeah.
him to drop it and it's fine.
The one caution we might give him is, I think a lot of the where it says rain garden flowers interspersed they might not thrive in the shade. But, you know, he could go and compare them against the list that New England Wetland Plants offers, or just.
I gave him a lot of lists, and they were shade and sun specific.
Okay, I know, like
Find out for himself.
about half of those plants, in my opinion, will do very well in shade, and the other ones, like blazing star, probably won't. But he can try and see how it goes.
If somebody, I'm trying to get closure here so we can
Yeah.
move on that.
I
Get
think
rid
it's
of
fine.
get rid of that blue-green sedge and we're good.
Okay, so we'll tell him to remove that and just say, be careful about the shade and the whatever ones.
Yeah.
And we're done on that. So we're okay. We're finished with that item on the agenda. Moving on to, in terms of site stuff for Silverwood, I'm not sure whether everything's public or not now. Actually, I mean, we're going to have executive sessions again to talk about this issue. So I think
I had just asked that whatever Courtney can say that is not, you know, putting our toe into something that.
Do you want to make a stab at that,
is at
Courtney?
risk.
That you feel is comfortable without going too far? Other than the
Oh.
fact that we're gonna meet, we need to.
Well,
meet
there was a document submitted.
In
Which
the Dropbox.
it's public record. That Mr. Hudson Walker submitted, things that things that he would be willing to do, plus what he would like the town to do. But it's basically it basically all has to do with the order of conditions. So we should all take a look at that, and I think we will be scheduling a discussion at some point in the near future.
Sorry, it's in the wrong format in the Dropbox. I will provide it in a format that is openable.
I'll
Can I
add that.
ask,
I'll just add one thing before you go, just clarify that we will have to, it looks like what's been recommended is that we will have to discuss the commission's response to that email letter from that we will be having at some point an executive session with somebody from the select board and town council to go over what would be the Conservation Commission's reply to that. And that would be, it seemed to that it would come out that it would suggest that we do that in executive session. So that we will, I think we have that right. And even George, if you're still there, whether you want to comment on whether I've got that correct.
That's right, Michael.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to have to schedule a special session for that and coordinate it with select board and town council. Okay, moving on. I think we done with all the site issues.
Michael, did we finish up with the Sherborn Forest and Trail? Are we all set with that? Where did we leave that?
Yeah.
Yes, we finished that. They have to do an NOI and we're going to discuss what it is, the documentation needed and whatever else, but that we've done.
Okay, so we felt like we weren't going to go back and discuss that further. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Moving on, I see the next in terms of getting through the important stuff here. Update on the administrative assistant hiring process.
All right. So Deborah Takas is still very much our top candidate. And I have been in communication with her. She absolutely knows that and that there's an offer letter in the works. And, she's standing by and definitely still interested as far as what, I haven't been able to do anything official with her, but it sounds like she's standing by and still interested and knows that we're still interested in her. She had some HR questions, but the holdup, one of the holdups has been that in the town regulations or in the employment application, it said that other towns, there needed to be some sort of approval from the other towns. And so Diane Morris took care of soliciting that approval from Sudbury and Falmouth, and so that has come in. And so the question before you is about what to offer her. And I put this in the Dropbox, but I will share my screen.
What's the range of possible
So
salaries?
the posted range was 19 to 24, and but the maximum that we can offer for the remainder of the fiscal year as budgeted is $23.30 an hour. That will go up because of the cost of living increase. The maximum starting 7/1 is $24.23 an hour. Elizabeth was making this $23.30 an hour. I mean, I don't need to keep
Just
reading
read
this.
it.
Oh.
So
Well,
everybody,
You're just asking us to decide on the salary, correct?
That's correct.
are there any other HR issues
Nope.
outstanding?
Nope.
Anna,
Okay.
just the salary for the rest of the year. That's what you're saying, right?
I move that we approve that the job offer is for $23.30 per hour for the remainder of this fiscal year, and that it increases along with the cost of living increase that would come for fiscal year 23.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, Michael, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Cindy.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimously voted to approve that salary range there, and everything else is in order, and it's in line with what she's making elsewhere, if not less. So I think that, and given her level of experience, that offering her at that max is warranted, unlike some other cases where it might be otherwise.
Wonderful, thank you.
So we can get the letter out. That's the most important priority, actually, is get that letter out and see how quickly she can start.
Did she say when she can start, Anna?
She didn't say when she could start. She had put on her application that she could start May 1st, which has
Yes.
come and gone.
So hopefully soon. Okay, so we've dealt with that. Let's see what else we got here. Let's go through. We don't have minutes here. Are there particular announcements
I
that
don't
are
have any.
okay? Let's see. We've got mosquito spraying here.
Sure.
What's that about?
So that's the same thing that we discussed last year. And it's the same thing that we discuss and do every year. It's just whether this group wants to vote to not spray conservation managed lands in town.
Okay.
And then I will contact, and then I will take care of everything else. I'll contact CMMCP.
Then we should also discuss this signage issue, which I think we could do much more modestly after our discussions with them.
Right.
To,
I think we said one at the beginning of the land, one in the middle of the land, and one at the end of the land, just to kind of demarcate it.
Right, even on long stretches, that would be sufficient since they're mostly working from GPS and other kind of things.
I didn't follow that. Is that important to be explained right now, or is that coming
No,
up some other time?
not important. We'll explain it to you. We've got it.
I can talk to you about it, Anna.
And that doesn't need to be in the minutes because it wasn't explained very clearly. Does it need to be clear for the minutes, or can we just explain it offline some other time?
I think you want me to explain it, Michael, or do you want to explain?
I mean,
I was going to say, because it's getting late, that
so just some other time.
yes, some other time. Basically, we'll have some limited signage is sufficient for the minutes.
And we will be consulting with Sean Colleen about the positions the signs are placed.
Exactly. I think good point. We will make sure that that doesn't get in the way of what mowing he needs to do. We'll put him high enough on the bank and stuff. Okay, I would say, does anybody disagree with the, given our issues in the past where we've discussed the effectiveness or the not particularly important effectiveness of this kind of spraying on conservation lands versus people can make their own decisions on their properties, and this doesn't really affect them. I would move that we would request no spraying of the conservation managed properties.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jean?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Cindy?
Aye.
Okay, we voted that, approved that unanimously, and moving on. Do we have to talk about McGregor Quarry Pond Inventory Project?
I just want to ask the commission if they would accept this proposal, only verbal at this point, from Ted Elliman to conduct a spring and a fall botanical inventory of the quarry pond for $250.
Oh.
Seems
like what did you call it, Jean? Sorry, what did you call it, Jean?
A botanical inventory.
Oh.
Yeah, given what we've seen that's there, that would be kind of interesting. and that's quite a bargain.
Yes.
How are we paying for it?
Well, the spring portion would come out of, in this, it actually doesn't matter. I think we should pay for it out of the Conservation Trust Fund.
Right, that's what I was curious. This is that kind of capital improvement things that are appropriate for that trust fund
Right.
that we've talked about historically. Okay, I move that we approve the McGregor Quarry Pond Inventory Project to be formed by Mr. Elliman for the spring and fall, with funding from the Conservation Trust Fund of $250.
Second.
Is it for $250 times 2?
No, 250
for
for
the
the
whole
whole
thing.
thing.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. Given that
It's very good to
importance
us.
there, that'd be a wonderful resource
Yeah.
to monitor too. Okay, any other discussion?
Was there a second? I'm sorry.
Yes, I second.
Jean.
Thank you.
Jean's doing a good job tonight.
Thanks.
Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Cindy,
Aye.
great. Unanimously approved. Jean, I guess you can communicate that to him.
Yeah.
Okay, we're a little behind on minutes. We don't have that. Was there a warrant that has?
There's no warrant this week.
Okay,
For the tree removal policy, I do want to say that I have found out that there are some other towns that will allow the agent to just approve some number of trees, 3 or 4, as not under an emergency certification, just approved and taking down. And I wonder if that's something that would make sense to go into the regs revision as putting into our regs. It seems like the kind of thing that's a long, Jean says no, looks like it's the kind of thing, it's sort of like an AA, except AAs say it's out of the buffer zone. And so that doesn't, but there are towns that have forms. Do we somehow, I don't know, just have a form?
I think this needs to be a policy and we need to give it a try. I don't want to embed anything in the regulations.
yeah, we just have to find the time to go back to our tree policy, but I see where you're going with it. But I think a policy can be a mechanism where we could do that achieve the same goal that you're talking about.
Okay, so that'll be picked up at a future meeting.
Yes, hopefully soon when we, whether we have to make a special or something, but hopefully.
I know, I think we might have to have a special meeting for that, honestly. 'Cause it
Yeah,
keeps
I know.
getting pushed.
And it's time consuming issue, so it would be nice.
It
to
is
just get it.
consuming, you're right.
Okay. I guess let's think about that. I gotta go revive that little, and maybe whether I revive where that survey was that I was trying to do and whether get people to fill it out even offline. And then we might cut down on the effort at a meeting and we could pick it up. I'll have to look at that. Okay. Is there?
Keep in
anything-
mind with the, when you're saying what would you allow in the inner versus the outer buffer, that assumes time spent figuring out where the inner buffer and outer buffer is and doing some kind of delineation, not official delineation, but.
Right. It's going to be an approximate process that we would live with. And I think that'll have to be part of the wording of the policy, that we understand that that differentiation will be approximate.
Well, I still say that we should spend whatever $175 on a clinometer so Anna can judge how far a tree is from anything that might be damaged if it fell.
Sure, that's fine to do that. I have no problem there. Let's see. Do we have anything else? I guess we have some other people here between Sean, John, Hyde, and George. Anybody else in the public have some issues that they were here for that we covered or you missed?
I'm all set. I was just holding on, just listening in.
Okay. Hi, John, and bye, John.
I'm tired. I was going to mention that unless something happens between now and then, next week we'll probably mow the Hidden Meadow,
Oh, excellent.
which will
Thank
finish our
you.
list for May, the wish list from Gene.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you like Santa Claus?
Trying to be.
Thank you, Sean.
A little thing sometimes.
Anybody else? I don't know, George, I saw you on mute. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm all set. I was just listening in.
Okay, good.
I wanted to do a quick mention, going back to McGregor Quarry Pond. We've walked over there a couple times, and there's this beautiful little kiosk type thing, but there's nothing in it. There's nothing in it.
Okay, somebody has a mission.
Well, I was wondering if, we did do that letter to the abutters before, and I was wondering if people would be interested. I could try editing that down to one page for us to review next time or the time after that as something we can post in there. Remember, it was.
And we could also let them know about the inventory work that's going to happen. Let them know about that.
Yeah.
And we can put the results in there.
Right.
Does that sound like a good idea to those of
Sounds
you who
good.
remember
You should
that?
just run with it.
Yeah, Carol, run. And, if you can incorporate any illustrations or photographs, that would be great.
Yeah, the old ones were beautiful that we saw from the last time. So that would be
Oh,
nice.
you're right. There's some beautiful
He had some
flowers.
wonderful photos from when we did that last little. I guess that was from him.
I think I have it on my drive. Okay, I'll dig it
Yeah.
up. I'll do it.
Yeah, I might have it somewhere too, or it's somewhere on the file there. On that note, anything else, Anna, anybody?
Yeah, there were a couple administrative approvals since the
Oh,
last
it's not on the
meeting.
agenda.
I
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
I know. 92 Hollis Street for the installation of a pool, and 12 Washington Street for a new well.
Okay, good. So less work for us and easier for them. Thank you. Is that it, everybody? Whoops.
Sorry.
And again.
So there are two things, three things to be signed, and they're going to be now. Next week, there'll be signature sheets for these things that we've approved tonight. So when you have a chance, please just stop by and give me your signatures.
I
When did the
just
signature
signed
page-
everything today.
Thank you.
It's going to be new stuff, right?
Yeah.
When's the new stuff going to be in there?
I'll put the new signature sheets in there as soon as I can. I can let you know when it's in there, if it's in there before the weekend, otherwise next week.
Let us know. Just email us all when the signature pages are there so that I'll go do them all at once. And John Hyde actually has a comment, I think.
Good question. Hey, did you get the letter from the town, the authorization letter? They sent that over?
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Okay.
So that's for the Sherborn Yacht Club. Yeah.
Yep. And then I'm working with Artemis still on his. So hope to have that to you sometime this week.
I thought we got both of them. Did we not get Artemis's already?
You may have. Did he send it over to you?
I think we got both of them, but I will double
okay.
check on that.
Okay, so then,
guys,
then it's just the writing up the order and getting your signatures and stuff.
Writing up the amendment. We are still waiting for a check from the Sherborn Yacht Club.
Oh, okay. I'll bring that to you tomorrow, or actually, you open tomorrow?
I'll be there. Yeah.
You guys take care of this
Can we
offline.
talk about it tomorrow?
Yeah.
You
I have
guys
to get
could
up at 4:30.
communicate by phone or email. since
Sounds
that's,
good.
Thank
So
you.
selfish.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
On
everybody.
that note,
Talk to you later.
okay, sorry to cut you off.
No problem.
It's something you could deal with. on
To
the
adjourn.
See ya.
Okay, in that case, I move to adjourn.
Oh,
at-
you missed it already. I moved to adjourn and Jean seconded.
Oh, wow,
Way
where was
ahead of
I? I
you.
guess I must have had a blank. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Jean,
Aye.
Courtney,
I
Carol,
Aye.
and the big pastoral equine field, Cindy.
Aye.
Okay, meeting
Michael,
adjourned.
thank you for running the meeting, Michael.